South Vietnam, 1968, the middle of the night. Thanks to cloud cover and very few lights on the ground, it's the kind of dark your eyes can't completely adjust to, almost like being underground. Thanks to the Southeast Asian humidity, the air is thick and heavy enough to affect your breathing. Feels like you almost need gills. Carefully and as quickly and quietly as possible, a real-life Rambo places a small, heavy rectangular box out of its pouch. Robert Bob Howard, a man who looked like he was built and not born, built in some lab where scientists worked tirelessly for years to create the perfect soldier. Broad shoulders, buzz cut, square jaw, just over 6 feet tall, full of wiry, stringy muscles and a steely stare. Bob Howard, the future colonel, looked like a G.I. Joe action figure someone had enlarged and brought to life. Lying in a roadside ditch, Bob could feel the earth shake around him as a Russian or maybe Chinese-built diesel truck rumbled towards him. He began to unwind the 100 feet of detonating wire he'd snuck in with him. Crouching on adrenaline-fueled legs, he could hear and feel the vehicle getting closer. He held a metal and plastic box of death. He steadied himself and prepared to throw it. Soon the big troop truck was beside him and he quickly jumped up onto the dusty road, hurled an M18 Claymore mine into the back of the enemy truck. Within seconds, the detonator wire was almost at its limit. Bob slammed his fist down 3 times onto the clacker as the death stapler-looking detonator was called, and an explosion ripped through the night. A North Vietnamese convoy of enemy soldiers and supplies being transported down the Ho Chi Minh Trail into South Vietnam was suddenly transformed into twisted metal, fire, and dead men. Other trucks from the convoy ahead of the explosion sped up, and men from the trucks behind it grabbed their rifles and sprang to life. As the NVA soldiers looked for the source of the explosion, Robert Lewis Howard, one of the greatest heroes you've likely never heard of, snuck back into the dark night, and he and his team slipped back into the sweltering jungle. Today, we tell the inspirational and action-packed tale of one of the bravest soldiers in American history. We also recap what's gone on here in the Suck Dungeon in 2019, little special end-of-the-decade edition, year in review of Timesuck.
This is Michael McDonald, and you're listening to Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Happy fucking New Year, Meatsacks. 2019. It's over. Right? It's not here anymore. As you're hearing this episode, well, maybe you got like a day or two left. But it's almost over. As are the teen years of the 21st century. The 21st century, all grown up now. He's put on his big boy pants, pulled on his big girl panties, getting ready for the future because it's coming. Shit is going to get weird this decade, right? I can feel it. It's going to get a little Black Mirror, but hopefully not too much. What is going to happen with medicine and tech? How advanced are robots going to get this decade? What diseases will be cured? How many wackadoodles will illogically twist progress into conspiracy? How many people still won't shut the fuck up about nonsensical concepts like the Illuminati and the New World Order? How many people are going to be worried about humanoid reptilians controlling our every move? How many doomsday preachers are still going to be making shitty handwritten signs and yelling at strangers that God will return on this day? And then that day will come to pass. And some of us, hopefully most of us, will still fucking be here, making the most of our time on this big ball of dirt and sin and pain and love and hope and despair and science and mystery and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of magic. Maybe a lot of magic. Oh my heck! Hail Nimrod, hail Lucifina, praise good boy Bojangles. Let Michael motherfucking McDonald soothe you in times of trouble. I'm feeling it today, Meatsacks. It suck. Nimrod's will, strong in me. Yeah, so many yaws. Like the legend Dylan Thomas wrote oh so many years ago now, let us rage against the dying of the light. I'm Dan Cummins, the fire in Nimrod's eyes, the temptation in Lucifina's smile, the fourth leg of Bojangles, the song in Triple M's heart. And you're listening to Timesuck. Thanks to everyone who came out to the Happy Murder Tour in 2019. It was the best tour in my nearly 2-decade stand-up career. Love ending it here in Spokane where it began with, I'm hoping for a sold-out weekend. I had to record this on Friday in advance to keep ahead on some episode scheduling stuff. But last night's show, Thursday night sold out, Friday sold out, Saturday first show. So looking like it's going to be my first sold-out weekend for like the whole weekend ever in Spokane, which is very exciting for me. Because 2020, the 20-year anniversary of my first open mic that happened in Spokane, Washington. Very excited about the 2020 Toxic Thoughts Tour. Go to dancummins.tv. Check it out. Link in the episode description. Tour starts in Sacramento in late January, heads to Las Vegas, then goes all over the place. Brooklyn, Washington, D.C., Huntington Beach, California, St. Louis, Salt Lake City, Nashville. Oh, so many more stops. Again, please check it out as I work on new material for my 9th album, 4th Hour Special. The 3rd will come out in 2020, titled Get Out of Here, Devil. More on that later. And again, dancummins.tv for ticket links. Follow me on IG, Dan Cummins Comedy, for tour announcements and so much more. And now, before we get into the year-end review, let's suck a goddamn gosh dang legend, Colonel Robert L. Howard, after his tale. Yeah, stick around for an update on the suck. And then how about you stick around for a bigger than normal batch of Timesucker updates? Cool? Is that cool? Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Major John L. Plaster, a former United States Army Special Forces officer, a man regarded as one of the leading sniper experts in the world, highly decorated Vietnam War veteran who served in the once top-secret Legendary Studies and Observations Group, a man who co-founded a prestigious sniper school that teaches both military and law enforcement on advanced sniper tactics, had this to say about Colonel Howard, a man he called the Humble Knight, when he died of cancer in 2009 at the age of 70. He said in 1968, Colonel Robert L. Howard fucked my wife. I'll never forgive him. Sure, he was a hero, but this is my wife we're talking about. Do I respect him? Of course. But it's hard to talk about his Medal of Honor and numerous Purple Hearts and numerous Bronze Stars without also thinking about walking into that supply room at HQ and seeing my sweet Betty's feet pushed back behind her ears as Bob stuck it to her almost as hard as he stuck it to the VC. It's hard to go on and on about his brave deeds without thinking about Betty, my sweet, sweet Betty, telling Bob to stick a finger in her ass and moaning with pleasure. She told me for years that she couldn't come from sex, and that, in fact, a lot of women never achieved vaginal orgasms, but she sure as shit achieved one on March 4th, 1968, because I saw it, I heard it, and it fucking haunts me to this day. No, wait. No, that's not right. I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong notes. Let me reposition. No, I'm sorry, that was nonsense. That was not what Major John L. Plaster wrote about Colonel Howard when he passed away in 2009, but that would have been hilarious. This is what he wrote. In 1968, Colonel Robert L. Howard was a 30-year-old sergeant first class and the most physically fit man on our compound. Broad-chested, solid as a lumberjack, and mentally tough, he cut an imposing presence. I was among the lucky few Army Special Forces soldiers to have served with Bob Howard and our 60-man recon company at Command and Control Central, a top-secret Green Beret unit that ran covert missions behind enemy lines. As an element of the Secretive Studies and Observations Group, SOG, we did our best to recon, raid, attack, and disrupt the enemy's Ho Chi Minh Trail network in Laos and Cambodia. Howard was magnificent. Take all John Wayne's films, throw in Clint Eastwood's too, and these fictions could not measure up to the real Bob Howard. Officially, he was awarded 8 Purple Hearts, but he actually was wounded 14 times. 6 of the wounds, he decided, weren't bad enough to be worthy of the award. Keep in mind that for each time he was wounded, there probably were 10 times that he was nearly wounded, and you get some idea of his combat service. He was right up there with America's greatest heroes, Davy Crockett, Audie Murphy, Alvin York, the inspiring example we other Green Berets tried to live up to. What would Bob Howard do? Many of us asked ourselves when surrounded and outnumbered, just a handful of men to fight off hordes of North Vietnamese. To call him a legend is no exaggeration. Take the time he was in a chow line at an American base and a Vietnamese terrorist on a motorbike tossed a hand grenade at them. While others leapt for cover, Howard snatched an M16 from a petrified security guard, dropped to one knee, expertly shot the driver, then chased the passenger a half-mile down the road and killed him too. Holy shit and hail Nimrod. Do you have the courage and the grit to pull off something like that? I'd love to say, hell yeah! I would have stayed calm and got those guys too, but I fucking doubt it. A lot of people will say they're courageous. Very few people know for a damn fact that they're courageous, and Colonel Howard was one of those courageous meatsacks, for a fact. Also, since I don't know who they were, I figure many of you might not either. Audie Murphy and Alvin York were also American military heroes. Alvin was one of the most decorated soldiers in World War I. Audie was one of the most decorated soldiers of World War II. And we could do a full suck on either one of those dudes and may one day, but not today. Today, We're talking about the legend, Colonel Robert Howard. Let's get to know him in this last Timesuck timeline of 2019.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
On July 11th, 1939, after listening to some Independence Day fireworks while chilling in his mama's womb the week before and probably saluting the flag in utero, Robert Lewis Howard was born in the sleepy South Alabama town of Opelika, a town of roughly 30,000 now, but only 8,000 in 1939. A town that's part of the greater Columbus, Georgia statistical area. Used to be a real rough little railroad town in the late 19th century. Opelika's downtown was packed with saloons catering to railroad workers and other men. Frequent gunfire in the streets by intoxicated patrons resulted in railroads directing their passengers to duck beneath the windows when their trains passed through the town of Opelika. Damn. Can you imagine some Amtrak train conductor telling that today? How insane that would be? All right, everybody, may I please have your attention for a moment? We are about to pass through downtown Opelika, so please, for your safety, we suggest that you should all crouch down near the floor. We lost about 6 passengers a month to bar fight gunfire heading through here. I got my job thanks to that gunfire 5 years ago, when the previous conductor was shot by a guy mad at another guy for insinuating that his mother wasn't a virgin before meeting the man's father. Please, duck down below your windows. In Opelika, a town known more for textile mills and saloon shootouts in the 1930s, the son of Charlie and Martha Howard was born. Bob had at least one sister, and I think only one sister. I don't know if she was older or younger. I wasn't able to find any reference in any of the main, sources, the many sources listed in the show notes to this suck. Only one biography was written about Colonel Howard, and I don't even want to name the title or the author because it's pretty shitty. Took about 30 minutes to read. More of a pamphlet than a proper book, and it doesn't really give any details about his life that can't also be found on a variety of military history websites. And that's, I shouldn't really, again, I didn't want to name the author because I don't want to disparage them. I just don't know that, any in-depth interviews were ever done with him before he passed. And I don't think any in-depth interviews have been done with his family since he passed. Bob was barely old enough to walk when his father joined the fledgling U.S. Army paratroopers along with 4 uncles, of whom 2 would soon be killed. His father would also later die of wounds suffered during World War II, shortly after the war, and his death, of course, left a heavy mark on young Bob. Growing up poor in the rural South, Bob and his sister picked cotton to help support his mother and maternal grandmother, and Bob, in addition to growing up as the man of the house, also became a star football player in high school, winning a full scholarship to college in 1956. Full scholarship for football. Huge deal for a young man whose family's so poor he has to work from early childhood on to help support his widowed mother and also his grandmother who's living in the home. And Bob turns it down. Why? Because according to numerous sources, all Bob cared about at this time was, quote, weed, pussy, and whiskey. Over the next several years, Bob would father 4 different kids with 5 different women and get high enough to go permanently blind, which would make his later war achievements that much more impressive. And of course, that is nonsense. Get out of here, Lucifina. Go on, get. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Bob turned down a full ride scholarship because all he cared about was serving his country and honoring the military legacy of his dad and uncles. Bob was raised to be a Southern Christian gentleman. He detested vulgarity, which meant he would have not cared for some of the things I've already said here today. He would have hated this podcast. But that's not going to stop me from honoring him. He said, sir and ma'am, and please and thank you. Cared more about honor and valor than money and status. His word was his bond. He was a man who believed that your character was your action. Dude walked the fucking walk. Didn't have time for blowhards and phonies. Didn't have time for hubbub, gobbledygook. All right, so shit or get off the pot. He's that kind of guy. We knew all too well about, he knew, all too well about the high price one could pay for fighting for your country, and he was ready to pay it. The legend begins. July 11th, 1956, just 9 days after his 17th birthday, Bob goes to Montgomery, Alabama, and enlists in the Army. After completing his basic training, he volunteered for parachute training at Fort Benning, Georgia, only a stone's throw from his hometown of Opelika. After completing the rigorous training there, Howard earned his coveted jump wings and was assigned to the legendary 101st Airborne Division. An excellent soldier, Howard quickly climbed in rank. In 1965, Howard was deployed to Vietnam for the first of what would become 5 tours. 5 tours of Nam, where he would see heavy, heavy action. During his first tour, Bob was wounded when a bullet ricocheted and struck him in the face. After getting shot in the face, he wasn't remotely deterred from future fighting. The bullet would lead to the first of 8 Purple Hearts, and Bob would receive, 8 Purple Hearts over in Vietnam. While he was recovering in a field hospital, he had a chance meeting with a wounded Special Forces soldier, and that meeting would change the course of his career and life. He quickly recovered from his wound. At the end of his first deployment, Howard was rotated back to the United States, and he was itching to get back to Vietnam. As soon as possible, he volunteered for Special Forces, and then found himself at the infamously difficult Fort Bragg, North Carolina Training Center. An intelligent man, Howard was also described by many who served with him as one of the most physically fit men in any unit in the military. Numerous different authors and soldiers who served with Howard described him this way. Military historian Vance Garrison said, Howard was a strong, strapping young man. He was built like a lumberjack and looked like something you would see out of a Hollywood casting office if they were casting for a man who looked the part of the heroic soldier. It is no surprise that he would later see minor roles in movies, specifically cast as an instructor in John Wayne's The Green Berets. Howard actually appeared in small roles in 2 of John Wayne's films. He was also a paratrooper in the World War II D-Day drama, The Longest Day. A hard-charging physical fitness advocate, Howard would later have the local Montagnard tribesmen running around and doing calisthenics on later tours back in Vietnam. The Montagnard, by the way, are the indigenous peoples of the Central Highlands of Vietnam. The name Montagnard means people of the mountain in French. This dedication to fitness undoubtedly would save his life numerous times. It would serve him well in the Special Forces' brutal qualification or Q course, where he apparently dominated. After completion of his long and difficult training, Howard was awarded his coveted Green Beret, assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group. Soon he was back in Vietnam on his second tour, where things quickly got interesting. Shortly after arriving in Vietnam, a fellow Green Beret by the name of Joe Walker, along with his recon team, had been overrun by enemy fighters, and Howard came to his rescue. Walker, who was seriously wounded, was hiding with the Montagnard warrior. The Montagnards hated the communists and were close allies of the Green Berets. Howard took a dozen men and inserted by helicopter into the area, but due to heavy enemy presence, they couldn't engage the Viet Cong in a straight-up firefight and had to hide out until dark. When Bob Howard felt the coast was clear enough to move from his position, his unit spread out, and staying low, he began to search for their comrades. It wasn't long before they came upon bodies of men who had clearly died in a fierce fight to the death. Howard began feeling around in the darkness for some sign of life when he came upon a familiar, skinny leg. He felt upward toward the face of the body, and his hands found Walker's signature, horn-rimmed glasses. "You sweet motherfucker," Walker managed to whisper. And then Howard carried Walker to the LZ, the landing zone, where they were flown to safety in a helicopter. "Just knowing that Bob was ready to come and get you meant a lot to us," said Special Forces Recon Team Leader Lloyd Daniels. Yeah, crazy, man. He saved Joe Walker. Saved that fellow Green Beret right there. In early 1967, Howard had performed so well as the young leader of a Green Beret unit, he was assigned to the highly secret and ambiguously named Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observation Group, MACV-SOG, or just SOG-SOG for short. SOG was a highly classified, multi-service United States Special Operations Command Task Force created on January 24, 1964, by the Joint Chiefs of Staff as a subsidiary command of the Military Assistance Command Vietnam, MACV. It was the best of the best. That's all that really matters to know. Best of the best. The unit would eventually consist primarily of personnel from the United States Army 5th Special Forces Group, the United States Navy SEALs, the United States Air Force, the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, elements of the United States Marine Corps Force reconnaissance units, which conducted covert, unconventional warfare operations prior to and during the Vietnam, right? Multi-military divisions. And they was each sending their best soldiers to form this, like out of a fucking movie division. This unit conducted strategic reconnaissance missions in the Republic of Vietnam, aka South Vietnam, the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, aka North Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. SOG carried out the capture of enemy prisoners, rescued downed pilots, conducted rescue operations to retrieve prisoners of war throughout Southeast Asia, and conducted clandestine agent team activities and even psychological operations. Again, the best of the best, baddest of the bad. I'm pretty sure Bojangles served in SOG during Vietnam. Actually, I'm positive. He formed and led their canine division, some of the toughest and baddest dogs in the world. Pit bulls, Rottweilers, German Shepherds, Australian Labradoodles, like Penny Pooper and Ginger Belle. Penny and Gigi. I'm pretty sure their breed of doodle was created for SOG in Vietnam. I can totally see Penny and Ginger kicking so much ass in the jungle. Yeah, right. Penny almost got killed by a small deer in her yard last year, and Gigi almost has a psychotic break if anyone around her raises their voice past a comforting, reassuring volume, or moves suddenly, or looks at her weird. They're the weakest dogs in history. Howard's SOG unit participated in most of the significant campaigns of the Vietnam War, including the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was used by the Johnson administration to escalate the U.S.'s involvement in what was up to that point called the Vietnam conflict. Howard would spend the rest of his time in the Vietnam War as a SOG operator, would go on to become the most highly decorated American serviceman in the war, and in fact, still one of the most highly decorated servicemen in history. He would go on to become the only American serviceman to ever be nominated 3 times for the nation's highest military honor, the Congressional Medal of Honor, and in only 13 months' time, too. Let's talk about what he did to get those nominations. But first, just for context, let's take a look at some of the U.S. military awards Howard won for his valor in combat. Right? Awards I'm sure many of us have heard a lot about, and awards I'm sure most of us don't know shit about. In order of prestige, they are the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor is the United States' highest and most prestigious personal military decoration that may be awarded to recognize U.S. military service members who distinguish themselves in acts of valor. The medal is normally awarded by the President of the United States in name of the Congress. Because the medal is presented in the name of Congress, it is often referred to informally as the Congressional Medal of Honor. There are 3 versions of this medal, one for the Army, one for the Navy, one for the Air Force. Personnel of the Marine Corps and Coast Guard receive the Navy version. The Medal of Honor is the oldest continuously issued combat decoration of the United States Armed Forces. It was created by the Navy for the Civil War in 1861, originally named the Medal of Valor. An Army version of the medal named the Medal of Honor, established in 1862, to give recognition to men who distinguish themselves, quote, conspicuously by gallantry and intrepidity. God damn it. It's a word no one fucking says anymore. But you get it. The honor, right? Valor. In combat with an enemy of the United States. The president normally presents the Medal of Honor at a formal ceremony in Washington, D.C., which is intended to represent the gratitude of the U.S. people, with posthumous presentations made to the primary next of kin. According to the Medal of Honor Historical Society of the U.S., there have been only 3,517 Medals of Honor awarded to the nation's soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen since the decoration's creation, with almost half of them awarded for actions during the 4 years of the American Civil War. In 1990, Congress designated March 25th annually as National Medal of Honor Day. Due to its prestige and status, the Medal of Honor is afforded special protection under U.S. law against any unauthorized adornment, sale, or manufacture, which includes any associated ribbon or badge. So big, don't try and rock this one if you're going to try and pull off some bullshit stolen valor. Big no to try and use this one. Because of the need for extreme accuracy, the nomination process for the Medal of Honor may take in excess of 18 months. In a nutshell, the selection process goes like this. First, witnesses to the action are interviewed. Sworn statements are taken. It's not easy at all to get this medal. Next, the prospective nominee's commanding officer submits the nomination up the chain of command. If more than 2 years have elapsed since the act of valor occurred, a member of Congress will have to nominate the prospective recipient. Throughout this time, a series of officials will look over the documents, decide whether or not to pass the nomination package along with an approval, or suggest the nominee for another lower-ranking award. The Distinguished Service Cross is a likely alternative, being the second highest medal awarded for valor. If the package moves through the Army channels, it will need to pass through the Army Human Resources Command, Manpower and Reserves Affairs, Chief of Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, Secretary of Defense, and then the President. The President has the final say, right? It goes to all those desks. And then, in other words, huge fucking deal. The most recent recipient of this award, to my knowledge, is Master Sergeant Matthew Williams. President Trump presented the award to Master Sergeant Williams on October 30th of this year. Williams, a Green Beret weapons sergeant from 3rd Special Forces Group, was presented the award for his actions going above and beyond the call of duty during an April 6, 2008 mission in Nuristan Province, Afghanistan, that came to be known as the Battle of Shock Valley. Thank you for your service, Master Sergeant Williams. May you live a long life and never have to listen to anyone talk shit about soldiers or talk during movies or chew too loud at restaurants or smell farts on an airplane. But for real, I hope life is magical for you after the valiant service you provided for the rest of us. Now let's talk about this next award, the Distinguished Service Cross. Distinguished Service Cross is a super, super easy to get award. I've gotten 3 or 4 for just saying nice things about soldiers. JK, oh my heck. Super prestigious. The Distinguished Service Cross, second highest military award that can be given to a member of the U.S. Army, and previously the United States Army Air Forces and the U.S. Air Force, for extreme gallantry and risk of life in actual combat with an armed enemy force. So, yeah, tough-ass qualification. You have to blatantly risk your life to get one. Actions that merit the Distinguished Service Cross must be of such a high degree that they are above those required for all other U.S. combat decorations, but don't quite meet the criteria for the Medal of Honor. The Distinguished Service Cross is equivalent to the Navy Cross for Navy and Marine Corps, the Air Force Cross for, of course, Air Force personnel, and the Coast Guard Cross for those who serve in the Coast Guard. Unlike the Medal of Honor, these medals and all following medals are awarded by the respective branch, not subject to the lengthy nomination process of the Medal of Honor. The Distinguished Service Cross was first awarded during World War I, most often presented by senior officers in the field. The Distinguished Service Cross, distinct from the similarly named Distinguished Service Medal, awarded to persons in recognition of exceptionally meritorious service to the government of the U.S. in a duty of great responsibility. The Distinguished Service Cross only awarded for actions in combat, where the Service Medal has no such restriction. Next up, the Silver Star. We're just going to do a couple of these. The Silver Star Medal is the U.S. Armed Forces' third highest personal decoration for valor in combat. It's awarded primarily to members of the U.S. Armed Forces for gallantry in action against an enemy of the U.S. The gallantry displayed must have taken place while in action against an enemy of the U.S., while engaged in military operations involving conflict with an opposing foreign force, or while serving with friendly foreign forces engaged in an armed conflict against an opposing armed force in the U.S. So unfortunately, I can't get one for dressing up in a military uniform and taking out, personal enemies, even if I do a really good job and make a super cool shot, since I'm not in the military and I'm not fighting a member of an opposing armed force. Instead of the Silver Star, I would be put in prison for murder, which is way less glamorous and prestigious. Finally, the Silver Star is awarded for singular acts of valor or heroism over a brief period, like 1 or 2 days of valor. 1 or 2 days of battle, Okay, 2 more. Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. The Bronze Star Medal is awarded to members of the U.S. Armed Forces for either heroic achievement, heroic service, meritorious achievement, or meritorious service in a combat zone. Whenever the medal is awarded by the Army and Air Force for acts of valor in combat, the V device is authorized for wear on the medal. And whenever the medal is awarded by the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard for acts of valor or meritorious service in combat, the combat V is authorized for wear on the medal. That device is a small bronze capital V, clearly visible on the medal or ribbon when worn. Officers from the other uniformed services of the U.S. are eligible to receive this award, as are foreign soldiers who have served with or alongside a service branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. So that's very cool that we can give that award out to, foreign soldiers who are fighting as allies. Civilians serving with the U.S. military in combat also eligible for this award, which is super cool. For example, a reporter, Joe Galloway, was awarded the Bronze Star with a V device during the Vietnam War for rescuing a badly wounded soldier under fire in the Battle of Le Drang in 1965. Hail Nimrod. This act was portrayed in the 2002 Mel Gibson film We Were Soldiers, where Galloway was portrayed by actor Barry Pepper. Another well-known civilian recipient was a legendary Nobel Prize-winning author Ernest Hemingway for actions that he undertook as a war correspondent in France during World War II. Man, Hemingway, known to be a very tough son of a bitch. Might have to do a Hemingway suck. That would be an awesome story. Guy died in Idaho. Last military award to describe today, the Purple Heart, the one you never want to get, the one Bob Howard received 8 times. The Purple Heart is awarded in the name of the president to those who have been wounded or killed while serving on or after April 5th, 1917 with the U.S. military, including its forerunner, the Badge of Military Merit, which took the form of a heart made of purple cloth. The Purple Heart is the oldest military award still given to U.S. military members, the only earlier award being the obsolete Fidelity Medallion. The Badge of Military Merit has been around since 1782. Some dude named General George Washington designed it and awarded it. And I was wondering, too, I wonder if General George Washington is related to President George Washington. It's weird that during the Revolutionary War, there was a dude named General George Washington, and then right after the war, there was a dude named President George Washington. And they both sound super cool. I also was wondering if anyone If anybody stopped listening to this episode just a few seconds ago, what they were thinking, just thinking, how the fuck does he not know that General George Washington and President George Washington are the same dude? Jesus. One dude's name wasn't General and the other dude's name wasn't President. The General became the President. Fucking idiot. But back to Howard. He won 8 Purple Hearts, was actually wounded in battle 14 times, as we said. And Howard was awarded all these medals, some multiple times, the medals we just went over. All right. To give you an idea of this guy's overall military experience. Now back to the timeline. November of 1967, Howard is honored for the first time with a Medal of Honor nomination. A company-sized hatchet force needed insertion to destroy a large weapons and rice cache in southern Laos. A hatchet force was a special operations team of American and South Vietnamese members of SOG who carried out small covert operations along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Hatchet force units specialized in search and destroy missions, locating missing American servicemen. Cool-ass name, by the way, too, Hatchet Force. No weak links in a hatchet force. If in a magical scenario I was to serve in war and would be super brave and useful, and I knew I would be okay, which I know automatically makes me not brave for wanting this fantastical guarantee, in that scenario, I would want to be serving in Hatchet Force, as opposed to serving in like a wet noodle force or a chicken gumbo force. Not nearly as impressive. You found one of those hatchet forces? Holy shit, that's awesome. Yeah, I found a force too, man. I was in a wet noodle force. I mean, we didn't really fight per se, because no one really fights in the wet noodle force. It was our job to kind of come into an area after all the fighting was for sure done, and we would hide. And if people saw, found us or whatever, like in our hiding spots, we would just immediately surrender and then hope that those people would tell us that the war was in fact long over. And if they would tell us that it was long over, it was our job as a wet noodle force member to constantly say, like, but are you sure? Like, you're sure it's all over? Like, you're sure? And then we'd beg and stuff and kind of plead. And then, we supposed to keep doing that until no one would talk to us anymore. And then that's how you would know for sure that it was all done. Thanks to the wet. I'm going to show myself out. Anywho, the site of the Hatchet Force, wanted to destroy was already under surveillance by a SOG recon team, and Howard volunteered to land another team and lead the force to the link up with the first unit. Heavy fire greeted the Hatchet Force, damaging several helicopters, but the team still managed to land, and Howard then guided them between the numerous NVA patrols scouring the area. After completing the link up, Howard and his men slipped back into the jungle, scouting for potential ambushes. That's when he found some unsuspecting enemy soldiers, cut them down with his M16. Moving again from the base of a hill, Howard and his unit were almost mowed down by enemy machine gun fire, coming from an earthen bunker, almost invisible with all the layers of leafy vegetation camouflaging it. Howard's team returned fire as best they could, but then an NVA sniper pinned them down. 28-year-old Howard was like, fuck that. He crawled closer towards the enemy machine gun nest, even though he had to expose himself to sniper fire to do so. And the sniper did fire on him, and then Howard killed the sniper with counterfire. A muzzle flashed from the trees up the hill. Howard locked his sights onto where the muzzle had flashed, fired a burst, pulled a Simo Hi-Ha, waited for the enemy to expose themselves before quickly taking them out. The NVA sniper who was up in a tree was dead before he hit the ground. Continuing towards the machine gun nest, Howard charged it, totally exposed, firing towards it continuously, then shooting its occupants at point-blank range. Fucking Rambo. The dude was a real-life Rambo. After taking out this bunker, this nest, more enemy machine gun fire rang out from another bunker further up the hill. Moving his team up, Howard called in for air support. A bombing run was made on the position, appearing to silence it. Howard crawled up to the hill alone to check the results. Suddenly, more machine gun fire opened up. The bombing hadn't taken them all out. Too close to move away from this, next NVA machine gun nest without exposing himself to being cut down. He had to crawl closer. He's alone now, separated from the other men. He crawls closer until the NVA gun barrel was literally 6 inches away from his head. Flame-spouting tracers shooting at his team. And that's when Howard flipped a grenade through the position's narrow firing opening. Then a second later, he was, showered with huge chunks of dirt from the blast that killed the enemy soldier inside. And you might think that this is what got him nominated for that medal. Nope, just warming up this day. After taking out the sniper, after taking out 2 separate machine gun bunkers, basically alone, after shooting other enemy soldiers in a prior firefight earlier that day, Howard then engaged with more NVA combatants. More NVA troops began to invade the area after Howard took out the second machine gun nest. Suddenly, Howard's hatchet force unit was seriously outnumbered. Howard and his men fell back, retrieved an M72 light anti-tank weapon, a law, and returned. Howard stood up in the firefight for better aim as bullets are zinging all around him. He sends a rocket streaking into an enemy bunker. The position ruptures into a fire pit. Stunned NVA remaining on the hill abandoned their positions, thinking that a much larger force had moved in, leaving the cache site to be destroyed and just, taken out. Mission accomplished. Dude was like an over-the-top 80s action movie hero, where you find yourself looking at the screen being like, oh, come on, it's too much. Who just stands there and just shoots all these guys? And then what? Like none of the bad guys can fucking shoot? Can none of these bad guys aim? Just standing there? Really? No one hits him? Like this was his real life. It wasn't an over-the-top movie. This is documented. Numerous witnesses witnessed all of this, right? They had to for these medal nominations. Howard was recommended for the Medal of Honor. Wasn't given it, incredibly, for that. It was downgraded to that, second highest decoration for valor, the Distinguished Service Cross. And how nuts is that, right? Like you have to do all of what he just did. And you don't get the best medal. Like you get the second best because it's just so hard. Like the bar is so high to get these medals. Howard's second Medal of Honor nomination came a year later, November 1968. He landed with another hatchet force to lure NVA forces away from a CIA team operating deep in Laos. This is some intense, movie shit. For days, their journey was oddly uneventful, almost eerie in its calm, as the unit made their way along roads through tangled jungle and moonscapes of bomb craters. Howard and the experienced NCOs fighting with him that day knew something had to be up. It felt like they were being drawn into an ambush. The force leader, an inexperienced captain, shrugged off warnings, continued pressing onwards. Just as they were about to cross another field, the head of the column halted. A young lieutenant radioed back that the Montagnards were begging him not to walk into the field. The captain rejected their pleas, told everyone to keep moving forward. This is like a scene out of Platoon or Full Metal Jacket now, where you're watching some dickhead, leader, and you're just like, fuck, come on, don't be a fucking idiot, dude, you're gonna get your guys killed. What are you doing? Stop it. He didn't stop. The lieutenant kept everyone marching forward, keeping low. Howard ran up to the lieutenant and said, can't you see them? There's an enemy in that wood line over there. The lieutenant shook his head. He didn't see anything. He doubted. Howard did. So Howard said, okay, I'll kill two, and then you'll see him. Then he raised his rifle, ticked off a shot, an enemy soldier fell dead to the ground. Now the lieutenant saw them, and in a second, he'd feel them. A storm of return fire leaped out at the hatchet force from the trees. They all hit the ground. Before taking cover, the lieutenant was shot. Seeing the lieutenant wounded, Howard performed first aid on him, took shrapnel in his back and legs from a rocket-propelled grenade, an RPG, as he applied tourniquets. Right, he's getting hit as he's helping. Once he stabilized the lieutenant, Howard retrieved a law and a few Montagnards and then led them in a charge against a new target that emerged. It was a PT-76, a Soviet-built amphibious tank in another part of the woods. It had vectored its machine gun fire directly at Howard and the Montagnards as they closed in. Howard dodged between trees to get a shot off as the tank's gun continued to track him. Finally, he's able to flank it and fire the law into the boat-shaped vehicle's turret. An explosion and a rain of sparks marks the hit, dead center, yet the gun keeps firing. Howard fires another round just below it, right? More hissing flames churn out of the fractured turret. Now it's silenced. Dude just hid behind a tree, popped out, took a couple shots at a fucking tank, destroyed it. Wolverines! You either get that reference or you don't. Bojangles got it. It's one of his favorite movies. The original, not the remake. Fucking Team Swayze forever. As the day wore on, the hatchet force continued to fight against growing odds, seeing dozens fall dead or wounded. They struggled to establish a defensive perimeter. Howard himself got wounded again by enemy fire. As a medevac, a medical evacuation helicopter approached, the enemy drew a bead on it, peppered its olive skin with dozens of holes. It began to slip sideways, right? The pilot fighting for control. It lumbered a few seconds more and then crashed in flames some 300 yards away in the same wood line where that NVA had returned fire earlier. Not good. Watching a crewman leap from the shattered bird and then collapse, Howard, actively bleeding from some earlier wounds, ran alone into the field towards the crash site. Bullets crisscrossing and nipping at him as he forced his battered body to reach the burning Huey. He makes it. Checking over the crew, he realizes one of the door gunners was dead and the other was unable to move as the pilot helped a wounded co-pilot free from the crash. Howard lifted the injured door gunner into his arms. This is a grown-ass man he's fucking picking up. Told the pilot to follow him, stay close to the ground. What was left of the hatchet force provided cover fire as Howard led the men in, runs back across the field carrying a dude while wounded, fell and rose several times, right? Not from taking cover, but just from exhaustion. Finally reaches the safety of another medevac. Howard was urged to get on board this chopper, but refused. He refuses because his unit is still under fire. They're still in a firefight, and he wants to help. The wounded Howard fights the rest of the day with his unit, then sleeps in the jungle that night, then fights the next day, blood-stained and tired. The second day, he surprises 3 NVA soldiers, kills 2, tackles another, who he brings back as a prisoner for interrogation. And again, he's fucking wounded during all this. This prisoner tells them how many enemies they'd faced, or that they were facing, a battalion of roughly like 500 troops was lurking around them, while a regiment of another 1,500 troops was gathering to march towards them from a position just a few miles away. A hatchet force, oftentimes has as few as 16 dudes in it. They were slightly outnumbered. None of the sources reveal exactly how many men fought alongside Howard during this conflict. I'm guessing it was more than 16, but I'm also guessing it was way less than 500, way less than 1,500. With enemy numbers, when enemy numbers were obtained, the captain of this hatchet force now insisted on being medevaced out of the fight, despite suffering only a minor flesh wound. Meanwhile, Howard's skin had been perforated over 50 times by shrapnel from enemy fire. He has 50, chunks of shrapnel sticking in him at this point. His clothes are shredded. He still wants to fight. Fucking Rambo. The captain did, in fact, medevac himself out, leaves Howard and the remaining NCOs, non-commissioned officers, if I haven't already said so, to run the show. The force manages to survive yet another night in the jungle, surrounded, outnumbered, right? Howard calling the shots. The next day, Howard and the remaining men successfully extracted after more firefights. For these actions, Howard nominated again for another Medal of Honor, and he didn't get it. Isn't that fucking crazy? After all that, he didn't get it. It was downgraded, this time to a Silver Star, third highest award for bravery. The captain, who was extracted a day before, that guy nominated himself for a Distinguished Service Cross, and he got it. Fucking politics. Okay, so stitched up and put back into action again only a few weeks later. December 28th, right after Christmas, 1968, Howard was placed as a second in command of a large-size hatchet force led by Lieutenant Jim Jerson. They were sent in on what was called a bright light mission to Cambodia, trying to recover a missing Green Beret. Landing under fire, the force pushed the NVA back and engaged several more clusters of enemy fire before reaching the base of a hill where the missing man's radio beacon was sending a signal. Howard muttered to Jerson that they'd probably get ambushed, but there was no way in hell they were leaving a man behind, so they headed up that hill. Sure enough, NVA were waiting for them. They opened fire. Explosions and gunfire rocked the mountain, hitting Jerson, Howard, and several other hatchet members. Howard would later recall, there were 5 that were killed near me. During the ambush, the blast blew me back and upside down. When I finally came to, I was blown up in a crump on the ground. My weapon was blown out of my hand. I can remember looking up and seeing red. I couldn't see. I said a prayer and hoped I wasn't blind. I knew I was in a lot of pain. Both my hands were hurting and I couldn't get up. After a few minutes, Howard's vision began to come back. And by the way, what happened to him in this situation, his hands were badly burned and a bullet had ricocheted and hit him in the fucking head, like in the forehead. That's why his vision is blurred. He said blood was running down my face under my eyes, and that's why I couldn't see. I smelled the most horrible smell. There was this big flame, and there was smoke, and there was people screaming and hollering. Dude had woken up in combat hell. The screams were the screams of wounded and dying Montagnards, who Howard was hearing and smelling being burned alive by an NVA soldier with a fucking flamethrower. Can you imagine that? Holy shit. You're fighting in a tropical jungle so very far from home. You never know where enemy fire is going to come from, and then on this quiet hill you're climbing up, becomes alive with bullets and explosives. You get hit in the head. You get blown unconscious by an explosive blast. Shrapnels cut up your face. You get the bullet ricocheted into your head. You're cut up all over. Your hands are all burnt up. You wake up to the screams and smell of men you were just fighting with, literally being burned alive with a flamethrower. What the fuck do? Do you start digging with your hands and hope to start a new life inside the earth with the mole people? Some wackadoodles think are living beneath us? You run around crying, just scream, please, could someone please find my mom? Please, I really want my mom, please. Dear God, I'm guessing no one really knows what they're going to act, what they're going to do in a situation like that until they're in it. I never want to find out. Robert motherfucking Howard knew how he would react, though, like a dude with giant stone balls. That's how. This is how Howard would describe what happened next. The guy walked over to me and was getting ready to burn me. The lieutenant was badly wounded, about 5 feet from me, and he, the guy with the flamethrower, paused between the two of us. Although Howard had lost his rifle, he still had an M33 fragmentation grenade that he always carried attached to his gear. He took it every time he went to the field, just in case he ever found himself in a situation exactly like this. Right, M33 fragmentation grenade. Howard felt for the grenade, found it, and then as he held it in his hand and pulled the safety pin, the NVA stood over him, and the two men. And this type of grenade, by the way, is when you watch movies like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, the little round green one. It's exactly what you're thinking of. And then, this NVA guy is standing over him. The two men are staring at each other, these two NVA soldiers, for several seconds before the one moves away, shouting commands at his comrades as Howard's grenade now sails towards them. After he hears the explosion, unable to walk because of his wounds, he kills these two guys, then drags himself to a badly wounded Lieutenant Jerson, and with terribly burned hands, begins to painfully drag the 6'4", 220-pound injured man back down the hill to cover. Knowing they would never make it undetected, Howard hides Jerson in some vegetation, tries to make it the rest of the way alone, to go get help. Crawling on his back, he bumps into a log. On the other side of the log is laying a young American soldier who is frozen in fear and terror, watching this whole scene without ever firing a shot. As enemy soldiers begin to close in on those two guys, Howard and this other kid, Howard tells the soldier to give him his weapon. I mean, reading this shit is more exciting. Like when I first started reading it, just now, telling you guys now, more exciting than watching the best action war movie I've ever seen. It blows me away how calm and collected this dude was in heavy action, how brave and tough. I probably would have been that young soldier, frozen with fear. I would hope not, but shit, this stuff is terrifying. The young soldier gives Howard his pistol. Howard immediately fires it and kills an NVA soldier who was so fucking close at that point that he falls on top of Howard dead. Seconds later, fire from the rapidly advancing enemy strikes an ammunition pouch on Howard's belt. He gets shot, hits his belt, sets off a number of rounds in it. Then he says, "Here I am thinking that I was blown up again," remembered Howard, as, quote, green American troops watched the desperate scene from behind cover, too frightened to return fire. Howard recalled, "I ran out of ammo for the .45, the pistol that other soldier had given him. And it got kind of confusing at that point. Fading in and out of consciousness now, Howard again drags Lieutenant Jerson farther down the hill until he runs into a wounded medic. Howard orders him to keep going and keep the lieutenant alive. Howard then orders 3 other medics that were close by to stop treating the wounded and set up a defensive perimeter around them to get every able soldier inside of it. After making sure they had managed to do that, the terribly wounded Howard, who by that time is running purely on adrenaline, tells the gathered men that I've got bad news and I've got worse news. The bad news is that a viper just bit me in the dick. The worst news is that 2 of you are going to have to suck out the venom. And then the guy's like, why? What? Why 2 of us? Why can't one guy do it? No, that's not right. That's not right. That was ridiculous. He told the gathered men, you all are going to fight or die. That's his real quote. You all are going to fight or die, according to Major John L. Plaster, right? One of the men who fought with him at this time. I quoted him earlier, the obituary writer, or the guy who read that, after Howard's death. He said that hopeless was not in Howard's vocabulary. I love that. Hail Nimrod. Weren't we just talking about hope and hopelessness last week? Fuck yeah, we were. If you abandon hope, you might as well abandon plans for continuing to breathe, because in a sense, you're already dead. Howard always had hope. The medics Howard had just made to set up that defensive perimeter. They're able to locate 3 strobe lights, which Howard orders put around their position in a triangle to mark their position for air support, but air support wouldn't be coming for quite some time. After 4 more hours of intense fighting, several Air Force pilots volunteer to fly in and attempt a rescue. Before the pilots can arrive, Howard's small group is hit with another massive attack. This assault is so devastating that Howard called in a suicidal airstrike, literally within a few feet of their position. Basically, just shoot right where we're at and hope that you get a bunch of enemies. Miraculously, it works. He and his men are not blown up along with the enemy. Helicopters circling nearby are able to finally get in and extract Howard and his band of survivors. Not many left. Here's some intense info. Of the 37 men that Howard pulled together into that perimeter, only 6 would fly out alive. 6. Out of the 37, and from the 37, that was, from the original fighting force, which numbers weren't given, but I'm assuming it was much, much larger. In the end, only 6 get out. Howard ensures all his men are on board before he hauls his broken body, hallucinating, mercifully passing out before reaching the hospital. Because of his bravery and competence in leading his men in the face of overwhelming odds, Howard is awarded a direct battlefield commission. He's promoted from sergeant first class to first lieutenant right then and there. Reviewers read the after-action reports of his heroism with incredulity. I didn't prep that word. God, I fucking hate that word. Anyway, they're like, I don't know. I don't buy it. The report sounds like something coming from the imagination of a Hollywood screenwriter, not from real life, right? They're doubting it. But it happened. Howard nominated for another Medal of Honor. Of course he is, and this time he gets it. On a sunny day in Washington, D.C., many months later, he and his wife and young daughter, Robert Howard, stands silent as President Richard Nixon drapes the Congressional Medal of Honor around his neck. He would later recall, I can remember the president walking up to me with the Medal of Honor in his hand, and then he took it and he put it around my neck and he said, Captain, are you okay? You're looking pale. Then this incredibly heroic man says, Sir, I don't know if I'm going to pass out or not, but I think my heart just stopped beating. Well, he just smiled and said, this great country appreciates you, Bob. Man, love this dude. All the shit he did for his country. There's his giant stone balls on the battlefield, and he's still humble, still getting nervous to meet the president, still, nervous to be recognized for his heroism. After the Medal of Honor ceremony was completed, President Nixon asked him what he wanted to do the rest of that memorable day. Lunch with the president, a tour of the White House, almost anything. And Howard said he wanted a sword fight. When President Nixon looked alarmed, a secret suck agent started to move towards the two men. Howard reassured them, saying, no, not an actual sword fight, just you and me. Peeing in the same toilet at the same time, crossing our streams. That kind of sword fight. Before my dad passed away, he said he hoped to someday sword fight in the White House bathroom with the leader of the free world, and today, I'd love to honor him. And of course, that's not what Howard asks. That's my mental illness manifesting itself as constant, ludicrous flights of fantasy. No! This is what Howard asked the president. He asked simply to be taken to the tomb of the unknown soldier to share his thoughts quietly with others who had gone before him. Man, that's some heavy shit. Tragically, the U.S. media, reflecting the anti-war sentiments of the day, did not say much of anything about Howard, about his valiant deeds, about him getting that award. By the time he received the Medal of Honor, he was America's most highly decorated active duty serviceman, and almost no one knew who he was. Had Howard fought in World War II instead of Nam, he would have gotten a lot more press. He would have been heralded a hero. I'm sure a lot more people would know about him today. By the time President Nixon awarded Howard his medal, he'd served in 5 tours, spent 58 months in combat, and been wounded 14 times. Okay, let's go back to Vietnam now. Despite his lack of recognition, Howard went on to serving to the best of his ability. After he served in the war, after his 5 tours, he became a training officer at the Army's Airborne School, then went on to Ranger School, graduating in Class 773 in May 1973, serving with the 2nd Ranger Battalion at Fort Lewis, Washington, as a company commander. He continued to excel at everything he did, making Distinguished Honor Graduate in his office advanced course class. From 77 to 78, he served as the Mountain Ranger Training Instructor. As if all that wasn't enough, he also found time to earn 2 different master's degrees. He later served as an officer in charge of Special Forces training at Camp McCall near Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and later commanding the Mountain Ranger Training Camp at Dahlonega, Georgia, where he did his utmost to inspire young students. Howard's frame of reference was SOG, hard combat, the toughest kind, against terrible odds with impossible missions. He knew good men would die or fail in combat without martial skills, tactical knowledge, physical conditioning. Howard, now in his 40s, was famous for leading runs and long-distance rucksack marches. Stronger than men half his age, usually he outran his entire class of students. A whole generation of Army Special Forces and Rangers earned their qualifications under his shining example, with some graduates among the senior leaders of today's Special Forces and Ranger units. His highest assignment was as a commander of Special Forces Detachment Korea. He might have gone even higher, but he dared to publicly suggest that American POWs had been knowingly left in enemy hands and was willing to testify to that before Congress in 1986. After he retired in 1992 at the age of 52 as a full colonel, he went through multiple surgeries to correct the many, many injuries he'd suffered over the years. After retirement, Howard could not stop helping GIs. He spent another 20 years working with the Department of Veterans Affairs, helping disabled vets. He had a reputation for rankling his superiors and as an unapologetic advocate for veterans. Over the years, his fighting spirit never waned. In 2004, at the age of 64, he sat with the Green Berets of the 1st Special Forces Group at Fort Lewis, Washington, who laughed and cheered when he joked about still being tough enough to take on any 2 men in attendance and beat their asses. I've seen videos of this dude at this age, and I think you might have been right. I think you might have taken him. He was built like a fucking machine. He's like a fucking Skynet built him. After retiring from the VA, Colonel Howard often visited with American servicemen to speak about his combat experiences, making 5 trips to Iraq and Afghanistan. In the fall of 2009, at the age of 69, despite recently being given a death sentence by doctors, he still flew halfway across the world, visited troops in Germany, Bosnia, and Kosovo. Despite increasing pain and sickness, he had pancreatic cancer. On Veterans Day 2009, just over a month before he died, he attended a memorial ceremony. Pancreatic cancer, by the way, one of the most aggressive and lethal of all cancers. It's a real motherfucker. Only 5% of those diagnosed live for longer than 5 years. And that's in Western nations with access to the most advanced medical care. And it's very painful, notoriously painful. In his final days in a hospital in Waco, Texas, in December of 2009, old Special Forces and Ranger friends slipped past a no visitor sign hanging from his hospital room door to see him. When SOG vets Ben Lyons and Martin Bennett and a civilian friend, Chuck Hendricks, visited him, Howard climbed from his bed to model the uniform jacket he would be buried in, festooned with the Medal of Honor, rows upon rows of ribbons. A proud master parachutist and a military skydiver, he showed them the polished jump boots he'd been working on and asked Bennett to touch them up a bit more with a spit shine. Though his feet might not be visible in his coffin, he wanted the shine just right. The fucking class this dude exuded. Legend until the very end. Talk about facing your death with dignity. Holy shit. Dude was ready to meet his maker. He wanted to look good in that coffin. As Howard's old battle partners left, Colonel Howard thanked Bennett, then saluted him with his hand held crisply to his eyebrow until Bennett returned it. And then Colonel Bob Howard passed away 2 days before Christmas. By all accounts, he was an especially bad patient. He was a nightmare for his nurses, refused to take painkillers. He would often swill them around, then spit them out after the nurse left. This toughest of tough son of a bitch wanted to be clear-headed and lucid until the very end, and he was. Just dealt with the pain. After his family had been told on several occasions that Howard had only hours left, and he kept proving the doctors wrong, finally the head of one of the world's most dangerous soldiers, right, a man who became a peaceful gardener in his spare time in his last few years, he finally fell sideways onto his daughter Missy's shoulder, right, the daughter who was there for all of it when he's in the hospital there, and America lost what was arguably one of their greatest warriors ever. Having lived the last years of his life in Waco, Texas, upon hearing the news of his death, Governor Rick Perry issued a statement saying, "Howard was the bravest soldier I ever met. His unshakable commitment to freedom, displayed in countless episodes of battlefield gallantry, live on in the actions of our military men and women who continue to serve in hostile conditions overseas." 2 months later, February 22nd, 2010, America's greatest unsung hero was finally laid to rest among his fellow fallen heroes in Arlington National Cemetery, given full military honors. I would hope he was given full military honors. I mean, if Colonel Robert Howard didn't qualify for that, who would? 2 years later, November 3rd, 2012, the St. Clair County, Alabama Economic Development Council celebrated the opening of the new Colonel Robert L. Howard State Veterans Home. St. Clair County, just a little northwest of Howard's boyhood home county of Lee County. 2014, Howard was announced as the recipient of the United States Special Operation Command's Bull Simons Award for his lifetime achievements in special operations. Arthur Bull Simons had been a heavily decorated Army Special Forces member who'd also fought in Vietnam. And even though his name graces the Lifetime Special Operations Achievement Award, he wasn't nearly decorated as Howard. And not saying that to disparage Bull Simons at all. It just illustrates how truly special Robert Howard truly was. And that takes us out of today's Timesuck timeline.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
What a legend, right? Timesucker Zach Martin did the preliminary research on Howard a long time ago. Glad I could finally share his story today. Great job, Zach. I didn't know if there was enough info on Howard to do a full 2-hour suck on him, but I'm glad I could, work it in today. There's just, sadly not a lot of info on this incredible hero. Really inspiring, man, to bravely face so much battle, to bravely face his own death, to give so much back to veterans and servicemen and women, to handle himself with such class and courage and dignity his entire life. Reminds me of the Chesty Puller Suck 60 from November of 2017. They just don't make meat sacks like Chesty or Robert very often. Dude led such an admirable life. No scandals, no period of falling into drug abuse or degeneracy of any kind. He grew up without a dad, lost a dad, as several others to war. Could have kicked back on campus, been the big man riding out that full football scholarship while others went to fight. Nope. Entered the Army at 17, couldn't wait to get to Vietnam, engaged in more firefights than maybe arguably anyone else did in that war. Came home to a social climate that didn't fucking care about veterans, staunchly anti-war, stayed in the military, dedicated the rest of his life to the military, to fighting for veterans, literally until he was bedridden the last few weeks of his life with pancreatic cancer. Spent his last few days hoping he'd look sharp in his coffin. Fucking legend. A few years before he died, Robert spoke to a graduating class of infantry leaders, and this is one of the messages he gave them. You, young men, your word is your bond, but your character is your actions. You have demonstrated the character that the forefathers bequeathed you that made this great nation that we got today. Never surrender your weapon and face the enemy. Man, I picture him saying that with some steel in his eye. And I'd like to tweak that message into one for all of you, right? For myself, too. Never surrender your dreams and face your life. Hail Nimrod! Before going on to our first, or our top 5 takeaways for today, not our first of two, it's just one. But it is a double feature of sorts. Let's do a rundown of the most prestigious medals Colonel Howard was given, right? Dude was awarded the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Defense Superior Service Medal, 4 Legion of Merit medals, 4 Bronze Stars, 8 Purple Hearts, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, 3 Air Medals, Joint Service Commendation, and 7 Army Commendation Medals. And he could bench press 3,000 pounds without warming up, and he could shoot an apple off an eagle's head while it flew from 2 miles out with no scope, while blindfolded, and he had 2 dicks, one for everyday use, one for special occasions. And it is now time for top 5 takeaways.
Timesuck top 5 takeaways.
Number 1, Robert Howard retired from the U.S. Army after 36 years of service as a full colonel and is the most highly decorated service member on active duty. Number 2, Howard died on December 23rd, 2009 at the age of 70, worried mostly about his boots and his uniform, how they would look at his funeral. He now rests at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 7A, grave 138, if you ever want to stop by and pay your respects. Number 3, once wounded so badly he couldn't walk, he demanded that a frightened soldier give him his gun, which he did, and then Howard immediately shot an enemy soldier standing so close that the man fell on top of Howard. Number 4, dude once stood up holding an M72 light anti-tank weapon aloft in an active firefight, risking being shot by bullets whizzing past him just so he could get a better shot off against the enemy. And he did destroy the enemy. Wolverines! Number 5, new info. Robert also sounds like he was a great dad. Before he died, his lone son, Robert Jr., was interviewed by the Columbus Ledger-Inquirer, 2006, while he was in basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. Robert said this about his father: I admire him greatly for everything he's done. My dad is a hero. Agreed. In addition to his son, Army Sergeant Robert Howard Jr., Howard was survived also by 3 daughters, Melissa, a.k.a. Missy, Rosalind, and Denisha. Howard Jr. served in the Army for 6 years, including a 15-month deployment to Afghanistan with the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team. Also served as a Special Forces member. 3 generations of Howards fighting on behalf of America. I thank the Howard family for their incredible service.
Timesuck top 5 takeaways.
All right. Now on to the next part of today's Suck. A little look back on how far the Suck came in 2019. A little peek behind the curtain for anyone interested on what goes on here in the Suck Dungeon here at Bad Magic Productions. Before I talk about projects or victories, struggles, plans, all that stuff, let's have some fun at my expense. We haven't done the Idiots of the Internet segment very much recently, so let's do a special edition of the Idiots of the Internet right now. One where the Suck roasts itself. Let me just push this button and let's just get into it.
Idiots of the Internet.
For today's Idiots of the Internet, let's look at some 2019 Timesuck 1-star iTunes reviews. I think it's good to look at your critics from time to time, right? It thickens your skin. Sometimes it really does help you improve. You're not supposed to feed the trolls, but sometimes it can be a lot of fun. So let's do that. Let's do that right now. I like to use their put downs to inspire me to push forward. On December 17th, Ang for One. We'll kind of work backwards here through the year of some of these reviews. On December 17th, Ang for One left a 1-star review with the subject line of confused, writing, "How did this podcast get 5 stars? I'm not saying it's terrible, but this guy loses track of what he's talking about constantly. Sounds like he's babbling about whatever comes to mind. Also, the fact that he thinks Hillary Clinton would feel bad about killing someone over Trump is baffling." I think he meant somewhat is somewhat baffling. "Do you even pay attention to politics? If not, you should stay off the topic." Well, first off, Ang for One, you are saying this podcast is terrible, hence the 1-star rating. So let's just fucking be honest. And babbling about whatever comes to mind, by babbling, do you mean reciting 25,000 plus words of crafted research every week? I think maybe that's just the jokes are throwing you. I'm guessing that you're not a real big thinker. And what are you talking about with the Hillary and Trump shit? I'm guessing I've talked about Trump and Hillary less than maybe any other podcast host out there the past 3 years. Like, I intentionally stay away from it because there seems to be a lot of other people talking about it. No shortage of media attention dedicated to dissecting Trump's every tweet, and previously to scrutinizing, every one of Hillary's emails, et cetera, et cetera. And also, why are some Trump supporters, emphasis on some, like Ang for One, the most sensitive motherfuckers who have ever lived? My God. If you can't handle one person mentioning Trump or any other politician in less than glowing, he or she is God's gift to the universe, terms, make an appointment with your fucking counselor. You need to have your head examined. I've never seen this before. Not with Obama or George W. or Clinton. Before that, I was too young. People love those presidents too, but they didn't lose their goddamn minds when anyone just hinted at any kind of dissent. He's a president, not a fucking dictator. Jesus. Let's calm the fuck down on the political front, right? Be passionate, but maybe don't be insane. Are you related to him? Or is he one of your business associates? Is he paying your kids' college? No? Then why the fuck do you care that much? Jesus, I'll never understand it, right? And I get being respectful of the office, but then there is fanaticism. Then there is being intolerant of criticism. You know who's truly intolerant of criticism? Fucking dictators, cult leaders. Come on. Let's not make it that crazy anymore. Let's lighten the fuck up about that stuff. Next up, Cuntsy third. Now I'm gonna get more fucking reviews just because I dared fucking, hint at any semblance of dissent of King Trump. Next up, Cuntsy 13. That's how it's spelled. November 8th, leaves a 1-star review writing, "Great comedy, however." Then Cuntsy lets me have it, writing, "This guy makes fun of child sex cults and sex trafficking, calling it conspiracy and nonsense. People like this make me sick. There are communities of people out there that actually come out of this with scarring from this stuff, and you just crap all over it. Of course they don't find evidence on the surface, they hide. Get your head out of you-know-where and stop telling people they're idiots and conspiracy theorists, coward." Okay, Cuntsy. First off, let me just start this by saying that you're an idiot and you're a conspiracy theorist. All right? And I can't respect anybody who says, pull your head out of you-know-where. Say fucking ass, you child. Also, remember that one time when I said that child sex cults and sex trafficking was inherently funny? Remember that? Remember when I did that? Remember when I made fun of the victims of child sexual abuse? Nope. You sure don't, because I never did that. What I did do, Cuntsy, you fucking idiot and conspiracy theorist, is make fun of people who ignore the people who are the vast majority of sexual abusers. People like, I don't know, dads, uncles, some moms, priests, Boy Scout leaders, the dude next door, right? The grocery store clerk, the fucking coach, the janitor, right? People who are obsessed with this notion of large-scale satanic sexual abuse cults. Why do I make fun of those people? Because I've painstakingly pointed out over and over that there's no evidence that these big satanic ritualized sex abuse cults have ever existed. People get molested all the time by other regular-ass people. Well, not regular, fucking pedophiles who appear to be regular-ass people, who are not in weird cults, who are just, living lives and fucking diddling. So the accusations, there's been paranoid. They've been paranoid conspiracy theorist horseshit Cuntsy, you idiot. Did Epstein maybe cover for other powerful wealthy people who sexually abused minors? Yeah, of course. But he wasn't doing that to please Satan. Wasn't doing that as part of some Baphomet-centric ritual. That is what I've been making fun of, if you've been paying attention, which you have not, Cuntsy. And I'm loving this, by the way. This is fun. I like getting fired up. This is very cathartic as well for me. I hope you're enjoying it as well. Next up, June 5th, St. Judas left a 1-star review with the subject line of unbalanced. Then they wrote, the content is as advertised, a fun waste of time. However, this man continues to repeat firmly rooted in Cold War propaganda. He will claim to be unpolitical until any leftist ideas are brought up. Then he calls everyone with these ideas stupid. It's just super annoying to see someone try so hard to get on Joe Rogan. What is big deal, St. Judas? You sound like communists. I like you. You want to jerk soft communist shamecock alongside the Chikatilo. We'll wrestle filthy capitalist American scumpigs together. Seriously, calm down, Snowflake. Right? I love this, by the way. I can pick reviews from you. I love that, like, some people will leave 1-star reviews saying that I don't like Trump, which I don't. And then other people will leave 1-star reviews talking about how I hate the left. And I do hate a lot of the left as well. That's what's tricky about this. I'm surprised I don't get more 1-star reviews because I don't like fucking either side. I don't like people on the far left, and I don't like people on the far right. I shouldn't say people. I don't like their beliefs, their political beliefs. Maybe that's a little better. But seriously, I don't shit on any leftist ideas all the time. I don't think I shit on communism, right? I guess if that's what you consider to be leftists. It's never fucking worked as well as capitalism. That's why I shit on it. Power corrupts, and a communist government has way too much fucking legislative power. See Stalin's Russia. See North Korea. See Castro's Cuba. See the former East Germany. Does it seem like a bunch of happy places to live? Also, Joe Rogan, what the fuck are you talking about? I love when people just put their own like realities onto something that does not match that. Like, this person has some weird view of me, like, oh, I just do this all to get on Joe Rogan. Do you remember that one time when I just begged you guys to have me on Joe Rogan? That didn't happen to my memory, right? Timesuckers have asked me if I would like to be a guest on Rogan's podcast, and yeah, of course I would. He's the fucking king of interview podcasts. He has the biggest audience of any podcast. He's a pioneer. But I've never once hung around the Comedy Store just, oh man, I hope I can fucking meet Rogan. I've never messaged his producer just, oh, come on, man, put me on, right? I've never asked a comic to put a word in to have me on. A former manager made it her goal to get me on, which didn't happen. Oh, well. I don't care. I still think the dude's amazing, but I'm not fucking begging to get on his podcast, and I never will. Because we don't need it. I don't need it here. I focus on content and hope that word of mouth gets me some exposure, and so far it has. And so far it's gotten enough. But okay, according to this dude, that's all I want to do. Okay, this next one's a 3-star review, but it's written like a 1-star review, and I think it's worth sharing. April 3rd, legal violence. Posted a subject line of fascinating topics, poor comic. And then they wrote, and there's a variety of all caps in here, which always is fun. I very rarely write reviews. However, this podcast is, all caps, extremely frustrating. Dan Cummins, the host, does a quote, all caps again, amazing job with the topic each week. And I would give 5 stars if not for the presentation of the show. Dan talks, all caps, very, very fast and makes jokes that relentlessly fail. I'm not quite sure why he doesn't present the product in a serious light. From fake sponsors to, all caps, terrible accents. In the habit of laughing non-stop at his own jokes, I just can't get on board and find myself often lost between fact and fiction in his stories. All caps, be ready to hit rewind constantly because he speaks rapidly and imitates accents while yelling random things that are genuinely confusing. I hope he reads this review, because he can have a phenomenal show if not for these small things holding him and his show back. All caps, slow down and present your show properly. Love the word properly. I have yet to laugh once during an episode. And I'm not trying to bash you. I hope I enjoy the show when I understand what you're trying to say. It's just, all caps, way too much sarcasm, and I don't know when to take you serious. I love how fucking angry he is about the joke. If there were a similar show without the jokes that fall so short, I would switch to it because the topics are amazing and entertaining. Okay. All right, you got me. Legal violence. Okay, I hope you're still listening because thank you. I did take your advice, and I created a similar show that I've had for a few months now. I want you to subscribe. It's called The Serious Suck for Dumb Fucks Who Hate Fun. Go look for it. You should check it out. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's all the facts from Timesuck, slowly recited with no humor, no passion, just like a junior high book report. There's no dumb jokes. There's no terrible accents. There's no fake sponsors, just straight facts recited with proper pronunciation. Proper. Like a morning news anchor reading a teleprompter when someone has a gun to their head. Just someone who hates joy. Did you pick up on that sarcasm, legal violence? You fucking lunatic. You delusional weirdo. Timesuck is in the comedy section of the podcast. I've made a living as a comic for 2 decades. Some people do like it. A lot of people. You don't. That's fine. That's fine that you don't. So how about, I don't know, instead of trying to change a clearly established podcast produced by someone who's been doing this shit a long time, how about you just find something else? That's such a weird thing when people do that. And I see that on like bands and stuff, like on their reviews, on like their albums and things, where some random username gives somebody like, not just like I like it or I don't like it, but like this, like career advice written as if the person might take it seriously. Like, does this person who fucking wrote this actually think that I might read that and be like, you know what? I know this podcast has a big audience and a lot of people write in every week as shown in the Timesuck updates that they enjoy it. What if I took away all the things that made it unique and just followed the advice of the guidance counselor who I never hired, legal violence, and the consultant that I never wanted, and just completely redid fucking everything at their behest? Like, do they actually think that their voice is that powerful? Legal violence, don't ever write a review ever again for anything. Just focus on your own life. No one fucking cares what you think about anything. Oh, what the fuck? I hate people like that. I've literally never done that ever once in my life, and I hope I never do. Hey, you know what you should do? Person who does something that I don't do? Here's a lot of advice that makes no sense. Fuck, unsolicited advice. It's always been one of my biggest pet peeves. What are you talking about? And it's amazing as a comic how much you get from like random family members. Hey, you know what you should do? Insert shit I've never considered. Like for fucking 2 decades now. Hey, you know what? What if you shut the fuck up forever? February 26th, Andy1234 posted a subject line of went way downhill and wrote, usually good episodes, but he started advertising for right-wing loons and propaganda. The cult of the curious became the cult of the easily misled. See, here you go. I can't win with these kind of people, right? It's like on the left and on the right, if I can get it. When did I start advertising for right-wing loons? Is Lisa Mattress a right-wing loon? Is Dollar Shave Club or Quip toothbrushes or the Great Courses Plus, are those right-wing loons? Andrew, are you okay? You seem sick. You're talking nonsense, buddy. You seem like a member of the cult of, I'm upset about something I'm not going to actually mention. Did I make fun of somebody you admire? Why don't you get in touch with their real feelings and write an honest review? Okay, one more. This addresses something I've wanted to point out for a while. It's a 2-star review, but it might as well be a 1-star review. January 29th, 2019, J-Mac leaves a subject line of steals from Wikipedia. And then they write, so I recently became interested in the Donner Party. I read all I could about them on Wikipedia, then decided to turn to podcasts. I stumbled across this one and eagerly downloaded. Lots of great reviews, equals an excellent podcast, right? Well, until I just realized that the material being read was exactly what I read on Wikipedia. A few of his own stand-up jokes were thrown in. This was not a well-researched retelling of the Donner Party. This was directly stolen from Wikipedia. Hard to be impressed there. So I don't think I'll continue to listen to a podcast that steals material from the internet, then reads it verbatim. Let me know when you write your own original material. Let me know. Like, I was like, hey, somebody get a hold of J-Mac. I got to let him know. Hey, J-Mac, I'm letting you know now, buddy. I'm letting you know that this has always been a podcast of original material. And I'm also letting you to know that you don't seem to understand how fucking historical research works. Right? First, I didn't throw in any of my stand-up jokes into that episode. I don't have a bunch of jokes from my stand-up about, American pioneers fucking settling the West in the 19th century. Also, I didn't read the episode verbatim from Wikipedia. If you look closely at Wikipedia, J-Mac, let me explain to you how it works. You'll see these little things called footnotes. The Donner Party Wikipedia page has 197 of them. It pulls from 28 different sources. I use some of those same sources. And I also do use Wikipedia. I fact check it against other sources. And yes, sometimes information is presented verbatim from Wikipedia and other sources. Why? because it's historical facts, not shit I get to make up as I go along. It's fucking dates and names and incidents and quotes. God damn, when I'm quoting some historical figure, I would hope I was using the same verbatim information as it would appear in any source. I construct these episodes, if you don't know, by assembling what I consider to be the key building blocks of a topic together into the form of a compelling narrative, then layer in reactions and show mythology, characters, inside jokes, etc. I don't just wing it. Yeah, I'm reading from notes every time. Like, I'm amazed when some people still think that, like, I just make this shit up. What are you fucking talking about? If I was able to recite, like, just all of these facts and figures accurately for 2 hours on a different subject every week, I would not be doing a podcast. I would be working in some fucking crazy think tank. The government would have kidnapped me, and I'd be the smartest person who had ever lived doing this. I wouldn't be fucking telling dick jokes. Yes, when it comes to the presentation of facts, I copy and paste chunks into the notes because I don't want to get it wrong. I'm trying to be accurate. I rewrite it into my voice and add jokes, but yeah, the information's taken from other places because Timesuck is basically just a weekly fucked up research paper. And that's how research works. You retell a story. You don't tell it for the first time. And you tell it as it happened if you're doing a good job. And you learn how it happened by reading from the sources. And if you want to convey the story as factually as possible, you don't alter the source information. J-Mac, you should start a podcast with legal violence. You should call it Two Dudes Who Don't Understand How Life Works Telling Shitty Tales. One of you could present information slowly with no humor, and the other could complain about how that's the same information found in the sources. And finally, I do want to say, after looking back through a full year's worth of reviews, on iTunes, man, there really weren't that many bad ones. And I feel very blessed to have that because the internet, as I'm sure all of you know, it is full of so much hate. Like, there's this random female bodybuilder I follow on Instagram. This is so random, but I was thinking about this morning. And I follow her, and I am amazed how many people just shit on her in the comments of every single post. All the pictures are just pictures of her like flexing and stuff. Like, if you don't want to see a woman flexing her muscles, then don't fucking follow her. Right? And I don't want to say her name because I don't want to like add to like, more shit. And frankly, I don't have it in front of me right now. I'm just talking on my ass a little bit. But I was thinking about like how the internet uses to so many people. I mean, it's every post. Dudes threatened by her strength or just guys who don't like the way she looks. And then fucking whatever. That's your right. But then they have to say it on her profile over and over and over. Fuck everyone who does that. If you're somebody who goes on some public profile, fuck you. Seriously. Like, what are you doing? Why are you it's so needless just to be hateful for no reason. Good job. Way to throw something good out in the world. Way to just fucking shit on something, you piece of fucking shit. I hate people like that so much. You're fucking worthless when you do stuff like that. But you guys, it's amazing. It's amazing. Very little hate. Very little. And I almost always get the feeling that it's somebody who pops in, isn't really familiar with it, just, maybe they got exposed to it from a different, appearance on another podcast. It's not somebody who found it through my stand-up or through a friend recommendation, I don't think. And look, and I get like some of you, like maybe you don't like the way the podcast has changed. Maybe you're about to go out. But I feel like most of the people who've been listening for a while, when they do leave, they just leave. They don't leave a bunch of hateful stuff behind. It's a classy way to leave. And I get it, it's not what you enjoy anymore. That stuff all makes sense to me. But the hateful stuff, thank you guys so much for not being one of these idiots of the internet.
Idiots of the internet.
That was cathartic. Thanks for letting me purge out some anger there. Now let's get to some positive stuff. Let me update you on how things have gone behind the scenes in 2019. It was a big year. Thanks to all of you. Let's go over some cool stats to kick this off. I'm sure some of you at least are curious about this stuff. Let's start with the Cult of the Curious group on Facebook. Harmony gave me these stats this morning. In January, we had 3,764 members of the Cult of the Curious Facebook group. Now we have almost 15,000 members, 14,705, right? The overwhelming majority come from the U.S., but not all. 13,990 from the U.S., 185 from Australia, 168 from the UK, 33 from New Zealand, 14 from Nigeria, 13 from Ireland, keeps going down. Most of the US, but we're making a little progress overseas. Indianapolis is the city with the most Cult of the Curious Facebook members, 113. Spokane, Washington, next, 104. Denver, 100, Portland, Oregon, 97, Kansas City, Missouri, 96, Phoenix with 91, and then lots of other places. 70% of the members are dudes, 30% are women, 4% or 0.4% other. Yeah, almost 30% women. We had just 37,000 posts, over 627,000 comments. Amazing. And that's just Facebook. And that's just the numbers. That's not counting all the friendships that were born. All the people that just had so much fun, coming together, somewhat like-minded, sharing ideas, talking about things serious and not serious, having some laughs. Let's talk about overall audience size on YouTube, where we get the least amount of kind of views. Our subscriptions went from less than 5,000 to start the year to over 20,000 now. Our RSS feed, which counts total podcast listens, we broke 1 million total show downloads in 1 month for the first time in January. In October, we broke over 2 million downloads in a single month. The D.B. Cooper mystery, the first episode of 2019, got around 125,000 downloads in the first 60 days of release. The Mormonism episode in September got around 240,000 downloads in the first 60 days, has almost 270,000 downloads now. Our most downloaded episode of the year. So basically, we almost exactly doubled in size in 2019, doubled on Patreon as well. We had roughly 3,500 Space Lizards to start the year. As of this release, the count was 6,900. And how have we grown? Mostly because of you. I don't appear on that many other podcasts. I'm not buddies with Joe Rogan, despite what that one dude thinks. Not buddies with Bill Burr or Whitney Cummins. Jimmy and James, a small town murder, crime and sports. Fantastic dudes with fantastic true crime podcasts. The best out there, in my opinion. They've talked about Timesuck, which has helped a lot. Tom and Dan of A Mediocre Time with Tom and Dan, that Florida podcast that, really helped get me started. They've talked about me, which has helped. The Florida Podfathers, dudes with a great show. They built the blueprint for not just having a podcast, but building a podcast community. Todd McComas, Pat McAfee, the other guys at Heartland Radio, great dudes, great podcasts. Ross Patterson, the folks at Drinking Bros, that podcast, more great peeps. They helped. Anthony Rizzuto and the crew at the Rizzuto Show in St. Louis. That podcast and radio show helped. Joey Diaz, Uncle Joey from the Church of What's Happening Now. He helped a ton. Bert Kreischer, his awesome Bertcast podcast. He helped. He's talked about me in other podcasts. Just because he's a good dude and super funny. Joe Coy in the Koi Pond. That's helped. Johnny Dare in Kansas City. Mike Holmgren in Phoenix. All solid guys who helped promote me and Timesuck. And a ton of other morning radio DJs, podcast hosts. I'm sure I'm forgetting. But mostly, since I'm in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and not New York or Los Angeles, where I can just pop in on big podcasts and promote on the regular, mostly this show has grown because of you, because of word of mouth. Nothing beats word of mouth, right? That's why the growth of this show has been so steady month after month. And because of that growth, we've been able to do some really cool things like donate to charity. 20% of all the Patreon Space Lizard subscription money we receive after 10 grand, which was the original monthly operating cost back when we only had Reverend Dr. Joe Horsecock Johnson Paisley in the office, and rent and some part-time employees, app development, et cetera. 20% after 10 grand each month goes to charity. And we've donated over 30 grand in charity in 2019. If things keep tracking like they are, we're going to donate over 50,000 more in 2020. In January, we donated $1,400 to the Pew Research Foundation, a great organization that helps with truth in media, an organization built on gathering and sharing factual information. I've leaned on them many times for stats. In February, we donated $1,600 to the Cancer Research Institute. In March, we donated $1,800 to Bikers Against Child Abuse. In April, we donated $2,000 to Timesucker Cameron Owens Stair Climb for firehero.org to raise money for firefighters and their families, and the families of those killed or injured in duty or while on duty. In May, we donated $2,200 to Leo Support Foundation via Timesucker Michael Best, providing life-saving and protective equipment for law enforcement. In June, we donated $2,400 to the National Alliance to End Homelessness to help do exactly that. In July, we donated $2,600 to 100-plus abandoned dogs of Everglades, Florida Rescue in honor of A Mediocre Time's Travis Butler. His brother lost his life in a tragic accident. In August, we donated $2,800 to Impulse Youth Arts Organization on behalf of Timesucker Jordan Alfaro to support the arts and music continuing to be taught and supported in public schools. In September, we donated $3,000 to Youth on Record, a Denver-based nonprofit helping at-risk youth graduate and build careers in the arts. In October, we donated $3,200 to the nonprofit Holding Out Help, an organization that provides those who come from a polygamous culture the resources needed to transition from isolation to independence. In November, we donated $3,500 to the Patriot Guard Riders nonprofit, a group dedicated to shield veterans' families at their funerals from dumb shit hate groups like the Westboro Baptist Church. And finally, this month, we ended up donating over $4,000 to give 5 culturally curious families a Christmas they otherwise could not have received. Fuck yeah. Hail Nimrod. Praise Lucifina. Praise Bojangles. Huge praise and thanks to the Space Lizards, the guardian angels of the suck. Let's talk a little bit about those Space Lizards. Listeners who pay $5 a month on Patreon become Space Lizards. They get 20% off Timesuck merch. They get exclusive Space Lizard merch. They get to download my secret stand-up album, Feel the Heat. They get to vote on topics and pick 2 Monday topics a month. They've done a great job this year picking so many great topics. They gain access to a weekly podcast, The Secret Suck. New episodes drop Thursdays at noon Pacific time. Just released our 96th Secret Suck episode. Episodes average an hour and 45 minutes each. That's 168 hours of Secret Suck content. That show has evolved a lot from its first episode, just like Timesuck did. It's different than Timesuck, quite a bit different. Harmony told me if Timesuck is school, then the Secret Suck is recess. Like Timesuck, it's kind of hard to describe. There's segments like the Will of the Suck, where Space Lizards use the app to send in 60-second voice messages talking about Timesuck-related things or responding to weekly challenges we've done, like Michael McDonald impressions. Guess which song this air banjo melody is, right? Bang, dang. Oh, actually, I just tried to pull that. Dank, 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 bang, dank, dank, bang, dank, 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 pang, tank, pang, tank, pang, tang, pang, tang, pang, tang, pang, tang. Back in black. Come on. Craziest sexual fetish. What's a fetish? Sounds like a weird vegetable. What crime did you get away with? Bathroom disaster stories. All kinds of fun stuff we've had a lot of laughs with. There's the Space Lizard latest, where we update previous suck topics with new info, stay up to date on Scientology, UFO sighting stories, O.J. Simpson, Casey Anthony, Elon Musk, robots, Oak Island. So many Oak Island updates, all very important. And more. We have the Wackadoodle of the Week segment, where we find people online trying to convince you that they spent 20 years on Mars as a space marine, or they can talk to dead pets, fly, fluffy, fly, or channel aliens talking about continuums, healing you with a magic jacket, or that God, wants him to be mayor of Toledo, Ohio. Then we often take a quote from one of these nuts and turn it into a sound button, I can push a little button and you can hear stuff like giant stone balls. Secret Suck is heavy on buttons and castles. Button castles. You get it, Space Lizards. And if you think Timesuck is heavy on inside jokes, holy shit, the Secret Suck, next level inside jokes. Other segments like the Third Eye of David Icke, where we break down conspiracies, Positively Insane. And someday I'll talk more about this stuff on the Timesuck feed. I don't want to turn this recap into a Secret Suck commercial, but I want you to know what we've been doing. It's been a lot of fun. And I love that some listeners enjoyed the Secret Suck more than Timesuck. One of the main benefits of the Secret Suck and all the Patreon support, the income it provides, is it's allowed us to expand. To start the year, we doubled the size of the Suck Dungeon, had an entrance punched through the wall into the empty space next door, and we used that space. That's where Harmony's desk is, Zach's desk is. We created a second studio for Scared to Death, the paranormal horror podcast I do with the Queen of the Suck, my wife Lindsay. Episodes coming out, just before midnight on Tuesdays. Pacific time. We were able to spend over $25,000 to build that studio, make the show much more visually appealing for those who watch on YouTube. And Scared to Death now has over 75,000 weekly listeners. Fantastic for a show that just started a few months back. Couldn't have launched it without Space Lizard support. Also, this past spring, we hired a second full-time employee, not counting Lindsay or myself, Zach Flannery. I met Zach over 15 years ago when I was doing a lot of stand-up comedy in Spokane, Washington. Working out material around town. He's producing some local shows. He was in the comedy scene. He was in the music scene primarily, but he also, put on some comedy shows. Also had a nightlife magazine that I ended up writing some silly pieces for, some staroscopes, some weird celebrity-based horoscopes. The years went by. We lost touch. Zach moved down to San Francisco. I moved to L.A. Then he and his wife, Monique, returned to Spokane. I returned to the Spokane area, living in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I realized that kicking out, bigger, more in-depth Time Sucks every week, and that, and then the Secret Sucks as well, and trying to work on new stand-up all the time, and touring and helping raise kids, that it was going to burn me out if I didn't get some help. So I started looking for a full-time researcher, Joe Paisley recommended Zach because Joe knew Zach from the Spokane metal scene. Because Joe worked for a decade at 94.5, The Rock, Spokane's hard rock station. And Joe was also and is also the front man for a metal band called Moretta, a great band. And he produces some albums from time to time as well. And he produced the last album for Zach's alternative hard rock band, Sovereign Citizen. So weird small world. Zach took a stab at doing a preliminary pass on a Timesuck topic, and he fucking killed it. It was the Napoleon episode. So then I was able to train him how to do research for the Secret Suck. And now Zach does the initial research for both Timesuck and the Secret Suck, which allows me to fine-tune them, the research, feel confident when I double-check the research, which I always do. And then I'm able to do additional research, which I always do, add jokes, all that stuff, and make a better, well-produced show. Late-night shows, sitcoms, they have teams of writers. Reality shows, documentaries, they have teams of producers, which are basically writers. And we have Zach, the script keeper, helping me kick out 4+ hours a week of curated content between the Secret Suck and Timesuck in 2019. And bringing in Zach freed up my brain up to work on Scared to Death, the podcast I wanted to do for a long time before he came over. I'm still curating all the allegedly true horror tales I tell on the show. I rewrite them to fit my new horror storytelling voice. Keeping the scary, supposedly true details intact. I love working on Scared to Death. It allows me to have more fun with paranormal tales than Timesuck allows because I don't have to be critical and analytical with these type of stories. And the Space Scissors made that show possible. You made that show possible by listening. And then this all allowed us to hire our third full-time employee outside of Lindsay and myself. Right now we got Joe, Zach, and Harmony Velicamp. Harmony, like Zach, had listened to my stand-up for a long, long time. I met Harmony over 2 years ago, October of 2017, at a show in Oregon, and she started volunteering because she loved the show. It was her idea to launch the Cult of the Curious Facebook group, so you have Harmony to thank for that. Her idea to launch the Discord channel. After volunteering for free for several months, she started getting a small monthly check for well over a year, and then we were able to, thanks to Patreon, hire her full-time just a few months back. She moved from Vancouver, Washington, to just outside of Portland, Oregon, to the Suck Dungeon, made that leap of faith with 3 kids, insane. She's doing great. She runs the social media accounts. She oversees the Facebook moderators, those awesome Meatsacks. Joe Paisley's one of them. Harmony's another one, but also Robbie Erickson, Liz Hernandez, Meg Howell, Ely Darling. Thanks for working with Harmony to build the Timesuck community, by the way, all of you. Harmony also in charge of curating the Will to Suck messages now in the Secret Suck. We get hundreds of messages, play 20 a week. Joe used to do that. Now he is able to have more time to edit Scared to Death, create cool teaser videos for Scared to Death, for Timesuck on Instagram. He's been building up a backlog of my old stand-up videos. We're going to post those a lot on Instagram in 2020 and on YouTube. Do you even follow us on Instagram, by the way? Get in there. Dan Cummins Comedy, Timesuck Podcast, come on. And Joe Paisley, man, if we leaned on him in 2019. He designed the Scared to Death studio, conceptualized it, designed it, improved the audio quality of this show tremendously. He is the rock that Lindsay and I lean on. He's been invaluable, always gets shit done whenever we need it. Working over the holidays, to keep episodes coming out just the last couple days. Joe and I hope to be able to launch another podcast in 2020. We've thought about that a lot behind the scenes in 2019. Is We Dumb, a beefed up Idiots of the Internet show, where we, really go after a wider variety of things and just have more silly fun. So we're going to figure out when to do that. Always hard to launch stuff when we have so much going on, but we're going to figure it out. Got a lot of sponsors in 2019, good ones, the Great Courses Plus, Lisa Quip, many more. All thanks to you continuing to listen. Also, ads are going to be changing in 2020. Learn that at the end of 2019. Now I'm supposed to just leave a spot for a future ad to be dropped in. And then that ad can be changed. Might be Lisa for 2 months. 2 months later, might change to Quip. It's called dynamic ad insertion, the future of podcast advertising. So I can no longer reference the episode inside the ad, which kind of bums me out. The ads might come across as a little more abrupt, which also bums me out, but it's the future. It's the way that the ad business is going to be working with podcasts. So going to have to just roll with it. So still trying to figure that out. It's new. Okay, now let's talk about fun. Let's talk about some fun we had in 2019. 2019 saw the rise of numerous Suckverse, characters, like the Suckverse version of Ed Kemper, who showed up in January. Mother, why are you getting my Zapples so riled? I'll put your head on a stick, just like the cat's mother. Kemper started selling pet sickles on the Suck. Things got darker and weirder than ever. Then in May, our most disgusting and possibly most popular character showed up, my favorite, which says a lot about me. Albert Fish, showbiz, peanut butter. That's how they do it in Hollywood. Dude started singing some pretty nasty songs. Well, you know it's the best when the poop hits your chest. That's how I come. I'll shoot my seed when your ass starts to bleed. That's how I come. That's how I come. Sure, my neighbors love that. In July, got into a little bit of trouble making fun of a serial killer, Robert the Butcher Baker Hanson Stutter. I'll fucking show you, damn it. Still think it's funny. Then came Bell Gunnis in July, and people were pleased again. Oofta, hangy bangy, pitching the thingy dingy, in the horsey worsey, rubbing and the tugging, oofta. Right? That's when we started moving on up. Moving on up. Oh, still makes me feel so good to hit that button. Yeah, get that deluxe apartment in the sky. Move on up. Oh, just finally finding a piece of the pie. Oh, feels good. So that was a fun one. In August, we got to wrestling with the outlaw Jesse James. That was one of my favorite sucks. Monday. The Timesuck 2019 year in review versus the future of 2020. Oh my heck, gosh dang! Albert Fish, Ed Kemper, and Bell Gunnis take on what upcoming gang? Who knows what the future holds for the suck? More what the flip or more what the fuck? Who will pull a Chikatilo and return in future episodes, and who will pull a Hanson and be good gone? It's September. We went Italian with a little Da Vinci suck. Here we go! That was a fun one. We also introduced Oh my heck and gosh dang with the Mormonism suck. What the flip? Jeepers creepers, guys. We got Odd with Father Yod and the Source family cult, his Yahuwah 13 band in October. You remember listening to this fun little ditty? Ballin', baby. We're just ballin' for Aquarius. Finding the path, digging it, staying it. Feeling the feelings, finding the light. It's right and it's tight. Watch out for those hang gliders, everybody. More dangerous when you take flights. Also in October, we met Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan, and we all really fell in love with the Calliope. Welcome to Anton LaVey's Big Top Burlesque Show. Please welcome to the stage Cotton Candy, everybody. So that was fun. We met Steph Cockscurvy not much longer after that, right? If your daddy raises you to listen to the Secret Suck and Time Suck from an early age, you might be a serial killer. We learned so much this past year, right? We talked about important stuff like the homeless epidemic, anti-vaccination movements, what to do about pedophiles with the Pedophile Island Suck. We learned about the moon landing, Vietnam, the Revolutionary War, Napoleon, the Black Panthers, time travel, and so much more. Covered a lot of true crime, a lot of mysteries, some cults. Also, the app, the Timesuck app has come so far in 2019, man. Huge thanks to Chris Pockel and Zach Steele at BitElixir. We have an awesome app. I don't say that enough. We have an awesome topic voting function. We have show notes, character avatars, a player that lets you search for episodes, lets you organize them by, what episodes you've downloaded or played or are listening to and more. Soon we're going to have our very own in-app trivia game. Been working on that behind the scenes for months. Harmony Velicamp taking the lead on that, right? What other fucking podcast has an app with voting features, trivia, and all these other things? None, to my knowledge. And you guys have allowed us to build that, to create something so unique, something built by fans. Chris Pockel is a fan. He's the guy, with BitElixir who suggested that I get on Patreon in the first place, suggested that we build an app, and then opened up so much else. He's a fan first, app designer second when it comes to Timesuck. Zach Steele, also a fan. Logan Keith, our merch designer in 2019, super fan, as is his lovely wife, Kate. Logan and Kate, man, they doubled our merch output, made so many cool products this past years. We've had growing pains for sure, but just because of that, because of growth, and lots of amazing merch. We had robes this past year, fucking cult robes. Are you kidding me? Hail Nimrod, so many cool shirts, so many cool hoodies. sweatpants, another challenge coin, a weird Ed Kemper magnet set, the Timesuck University line, holiday ornaments. Holy shit. And now we're moving to a new merch system guided by the fantastic Kate and Logan. It's going to have a dedicated customer service, representative, much broader product availability. We just, keep trying to push things forward. Really looking forward to stepping up our game more in 2020. You guys also changed my stand-up career substantially in 2019. 2019, it's kind of, I'm so week to week that it's been cool for me to reflect on this stuff because I don't a lot throughout the year. I just kind of realized as I was putting this together that I did become one of the most popular comics in the club circuit. There's theater comics, but I've worked in clubs for years and became one of the most popular club comics in 2019 for comedy clubs. 2017, I could barely sell a ticket. Thanks to Nimrod, thanks to all you, this year I added shows in Houston and Portland, sold out shows across the country. Club after club compliments me on how cool the crowd is, how polite and respectful you guys are, how well you tip. Culturally curious Meatsacks, the best Meatsacks around. I was able to record a new special in Pontiac, Michigan, just outside of Detroit at the Crowfoot Ballroom. 2 sold-out shows. That was because of you guys. It's going to be called Get Out of Here, Devil. I just saw the final cut. Very happy. 70 minutes of new material. The best taping I've ever had because the audience was nothing but fans. Made it so much better. Back when I recorded the Hear This album not that long ago, nobody would give me a whiff of a taping budget. Nobody wanted to do one. I also recorded some old material with the profanity removed in Denver to be played on the Laugh USA channel on Sirius XM, calling it Live in Denver. Just keep it simple. I'll release it elsewhere eventually. It's just going to have one album at least that you can give to your conservative grandma or an 8-year-old and not worry about offending them. Other than that, it's probably not going to have any, I'll have the one album. The other albums seem to be getting more offensive. So, you're going to want to limit the catalog to them. But I like that that's going to be out there. All those shows were sold out. It's crazy. Sold out 4 shows in Spokane where I started this month. First time ever. And I've been doing shows in Spokane for a long time. First time ever. Over 1,200 tickets 8 years ago after an hour special on Comedy Central. I came back to Spokane, couldn't sell 50 tickets in a 100-seat venue. It was humbling. So, oh my heck, thank you. This project truly changed my life, man. Always wanted to donate to charities. Check. Doing that now. Always wanted to tour to fans. Check. Done it. It's been amazing. And I want to take it even further and make it better. I think about all the messages you've sent in over this past year, how the show has given so many hope, that not everyone out there is a trollish piece of shit, that you can still have a dark, fucked up sense of humor and still be a good person and still find a tribe. We've gotten so many messages from those who have stopped considering suicide specifically because of this community. So many friendships have been born from this community. It's been amazing to watch. It's been very, very special. The Suck Dungeon has almost 100 challenge coins from first responders and military listeners. So many paintings, cross stitches, fabricated metal sculptures, all kinds of different things, very unique things given to me, to us, by you. The Suck Dungeon has become this museum of curiosities. It's become more than just a podcast, all thanks to your love and support. And we're going to be able to do more now. Thanks to a staff now, I can do more, content, create more content, and also spend more time with my family. I can get to the gym again, rest more, take a little better care of myself. I look forward to seeing where all this goes in 2020. How many more lives can be touched? How many more laughs can be had? How much more knowledge can be sucked? More conversations, started, more dialogues provoked. I want to write the best, most thoughtful stand-up hour of my career. Also have it be the funniest, of course. The show makes me want to be more than funny. You guys pushed me to get a TEDx talk. We did that this year back in January. First public talk I've ever given that wasn't humor-based. That's already changed me. This has all made me want to be more than just a comic. We got a lot of messages about how the Suck has inspired many of you not to give up on your dreams because I didn't give up on mine. Keep chasing them. As many of you know, my career was almost over a few years ago. A 40-year-old comic not selling tickets, that's not a good look. A comic who was given several opportunities by the industry, specials, late-night spots, almost had some shows go on the air, but not quite, record deal, but still isn't selling tickets? Someone who's been doing it for over 15 years, that person usually doesn't work much longer. But then this happened. And now who knows? Now the comedy industry wants to work with me more than I want to work with them. Now I have bookers and producers who, I kind of avoid getting back to because I'm too busy doing this shit, and this shit is enough for me. It's more than enough. So let's keep doing this. Let's keep growing this. Let's keep learning. Let's keep laughing. Let's keep growing. Let's embrace the darkness and also fight it. Let's chase dreams and be fucking weird and not be pieces of shit. Let's keep on sucking. Long live the Suck. And that's it. I could go on and on. Just jerking myself off here talking about Timesuck, but that's the gist of it. It's the last suck of the decade. Hail Nimrod, I hope you enjoyed it. Colonel Robert Howard, man, what an inspiring hero. Damn, that guy never saw a challenge he didn't face head on. In 2019, what an amazing year. This also happened in 2019. I should hit this button, which I know I hit earlier, but right? Michael McDonald, what?
This is Michael McDonald, and you're listening to Timesuck.
Yeah, met the Bard, Triple M. God, that was a funny meeting too. I think I've talked about it in the Secret Suck, but maybe not Timesuck. But he was so nice. He was too nice. I love that he's going back on tour with the Doobie Brothers. I hope he's reinvigorated because he's so good. But when Joe and Lindsay and I saw him, he was so self-deprecating. It was kind of a bummer. We asked him if he'd heard of Timesuck, and forgive me if I've already told this, but he was like, time what? Time's up? And we're no, Timesuck. And then he goes, oh, like the last 30 years of my career. And he kind of laughed. We love you. We love you, Michael McDonald. We love your soft yacht rock that always puts me in a great mood. Big thanks to the Timesuck team, man. Thanks for a great year. Thanks to Queen of the Suck, Lindsay Cummins. She does so much. Lindsay, in 2019, she became my road manager, my touring manager. She does such a great job. She's been able to tour with me so much. She keeps things organized. She allows me to focus on the business. She focuses on the business so much. She works with Kate and Logan to do all of the merch. She does so much more. She coordinates with Harmony and Joe. She oversees. I run the creative on the actual podcast. She runs basically everything else behind the scenes, and she does a fucking hell of a job. High Priest of the Suck, Harmony Velicamp, Reverend Dr. Paisley, the Bit Elixir crew, the Logan and Kate doing the merch, Zach Martin for kicking off the Colonel Howard research, just everybody. Thank you if you've helped in any way with Timesuck. And check out, what we were talking about. Check out that Facebook group if you want to make new friends, meet some cult members, get a little more social in 2020. Bounce over to Discord if you want even more interaction. Next week we're bringing in the new year with some fear. True crime, of course. We do a lot of true crime. We do love it. Return to the Suck with the Space Lizard voted in topic of the 1977 Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. We're going from inspirational to dark as fuck real quick. On the morning of June 13th, 1977, the worst happened. 3 young girls between the ages of 8 and 10 raped and murdered while attending summer camp at Camp Scott in Mays County, Oklahoma. Their bodies have been left on a trail leading to the showers about 150 yards from their tent. The gory case initially classified as solved when Gene Leroy Hart, a local jail escapee with a history of rape and violence, was arrested, but then he was acquitted. So who did it? Many still think Gene did it. What do others think? How could this have happened? Who was supposed to be watching these girls? According to what I found quickly on the web, putting together this preview less than 2 months before the murders, during an on-site training session, a camp counselor discovered that her belongings had been ransacked and her donuts randomly had been stolen. Inside the empty donut box was a disturbing handwritten note, and the writer of the note vowed to murder 3 campers. And the director of the camp session treated the note as a prank, and it was discarded. Fuck, is that true? Why was that note really ignored? Did they really just think it was a prank and they just didn't pay any more mind to it? How was security not beefed up, at least for that summer? It's going to be a brutal episode, but we're going to look at it anyway. Stuff happens. No point in hiding from it, but we don't have to face it right now. Right now, let's jump into the warm embrace of the cult of the curious with today's Timesucker updates.
Updates? Get your Timesucker updates.
Our first update comes from Timesucker Atticus Lanes, who sends a nice update regarding last week's Warsaw Ghetto Suck. Atticus writes, Lord Master Sucker of Sweet Facts, hello there. I just wanted to tell you what a great job you did with the Timesucker updates this week, Warsaw Ghetto. I especially enjoyed your points on how most people, with exceptions of course, are deserving of forgiveness for their actions. I happen to personally know someone who served in the German army during World War II, and he's one of the most caring people I know. He most certainly falls into the category of people pressed into service. He never adopted the Nazi beliefs. He served in a POW camp, but was later released and immigrated to North America, where he met his lovely Jewish wife. I hold him in high regard and just wanted to let you know about him. I found your comedy first in middle school and have stuck with your career ever since, hoping to one day see you live. The podcast always makes me very happy or filled with righteous indignation, depending on the week. Love you, love the Suck, hail Nimrod, and praise Bojangles. Wow, thank you, Atticus. Man, what a lovely message. Love you. And hope you get to a live show. A great reminder. Yeah, not all Nazis were bad people, as crazy as that is to say. And actually, our next update reminds me and us that not all German soldiers were Nazis. But before we get there, I love that this guy, met and fell in love with a Jewish woman. What a great redemption story. Easy to forget when talking about the Germans in World War II that despite all the anti-Semitic propaganda floating around Germany and Europe in the early 20th century, despite all those who cheered Hitler on, there were also plenty of Germans, plenty of quote-unquote Aryans, who were disgusted by Hitler, by who he was and what he represented. Thank you for that reminder, Atticus. There were plenty of non-Jewish Germans victimized in other ways by the Nazis. Now let's get it to another Nazi update sent in by Meatsack Braden Harvey. Braden writes, "Good morning, Master Sucker, guardian of Nimrod's butthole, Lucifina's plaything. While listening to the Warsaw Ghetto Suck, I wanted to point out that not all the German army was Nazis. The Nazis were in power and moving the army, but not all of the army soldiers were Nazis. The Nazis were known as party men, meaning they were part of the Nazi political party. Much of the German army did not like their Nazi commanders. I highly recommend the book Ordinary Men. It's the story of how the Nazis slowly acclimated and brainwashed the police battalions of Germany into mass killing the Jewish population." That sounds like a heavy but important book, Braden. Thanks for passing it along to us all. Interesting to remember that, yes, many of the soldiers who fought on behalf of Germany were not fans of Hitler or the Nazi party, weren't members of the Nazi party, just dudes born in the wrong country at the wrong time. Hail Nimrod. Update to an old suck coming in now from Kimber McLeod, who gives us some thoughts on immigration from an American Indian perspective. Kimber writes, "The immigration suck. Now you know why there are some of us who have a hard time just saying, hey, you won, we lost, cool. My great-grandma grew up on a reservation in Oklahoma. I visited a few times, and the white townies would say, look at that little squaw. Not cool, not awesome. Most of my ancestors got invaded and colonized by the English between Ireland and here. Hard to let that go. My kids are doing better with it than me." Yes, the settling and the resettling of the world continues in various ways. One culture follows to the next. The story is old as human history. That is why I think it's important to remember that beneath the cultures, beneath the various amounts of pigment and differing eye colors and hair textures, who are we? We're all human, all meat sacks, right? Different sexes, sexual preferences, spiritual beliefs, different customs and rituals and skin color, but deep down, the same. We're all born, we all die. We can and all do get sick with the same diseases. We all have essentially the same worries. Where do I belong? Who am I? Where do I go, if anywhere, after I die? What does the future hold for me? Will I be all right? Will my kids be all right? What tragedies must I endure? What joyous moments will I experience? Sorry for the scars of colonization and cultural assimilation. Hopefully they will heal and not haunt you too much longer, Kimber. I appreciate you sending in that message. Nice little different perspective there. Now let's bounce back to Nazis for a moment and hear from the Middle East. Super Sucker Shelby, keeping her last name out for her protection, sends me this. "Dear Master of the Suck, I am currently listening to the last few minutes of this week's episode on the Warsaw Ghetto. The episode was fantastic, and at several points I found myself in tears. As a secular American living in a religious neighborhood in the heart of Jerusalem, I have very conflicting feelings about Israel, Jerusalem, and religion, etc. I find it so difficult to live among people whose families suffered so much throughout history, yet still feel that they can treat others like shit. In my short time of a year and a half living here, I have personally been harassed for being transgender and have had one of my Palestinian students, a researcher at a university, sent to the hospital by getting attacked by a group of religious Jewish men. I also understand why Israel is so important to the Jewish people and the relative safety that living here brings. As an American in Israel, it is very hard not to reflect on the similarities between the current policies in the U.S. and Israel. I will actually be passing one of these reminders tomorrow on my way into the West Bank to celebrate Christmas in Bethlehem. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Every country, ethnicity, religion, etc. has good and bad people. And we need to judge people by their individual actions rather than the stereotypes they may fall into. Not sure where I'm going with all this, but I really wanted to reach out and tell you how impactful this episode was. Thanks for all you do. The podcast has been a major part of my life since being here and has helped me feel less alone in this crazy place. Shelby. Glad you feel less alone, Shelby. So glad you sent in this message. I like the mention of a Palestinian student sent to the hospital by religious followers of Judaism. Don't like that happened, but important to mention. No group, no matter how persecuted they may have been, are immune to persecuting others. Being the victim of racism doesn't mean you can't be racist. Being the victim of misogyny doesn't mean you can't be sexist. We can all become what we hate. Important to remember. We all, regardless of the history of our ancestral struggles, can add to the struggles of some future meat sacks ancestors. I hope I can one day travel to that crazy place you're teaching in, Shelby. So much history there. I'd love to see it. Stay safe. Now, crazy Casey Anthony update coming in. Holy shit. From Meatsack, Joseph King. This is nuts. So glad you sent this in, Joseph. Joseph writes, Casey Anthony, you missed something important. I cannot remember which documentary or show I was watching that brought this up. I was trying to find it to you to send the link as well. I did find it. Yeah, I've searched and found it. Yeah, they screwed up on her computer search. Whomever was doing the search didn't know about Firefox, which was new at the time, and they only searched the history under Internet Explorer. They didn't find out until after the trial all of the search information from her Firefox browser. They're saying that one mistake cost them, right, her conviction. Had they done that, had they looked at the search history of Firefox at her trial, she wouldn't have walked. Holy shit, Joe. Yeah, I looked into this. You're absolutely correct. In 2012, it was revealed that the Florida Sheriff's Office that investigated the disappearance of Casey Anthony's 2-year-old daughter overlooked evidence that someone in the Anthony home did a Google search using the web browser Firefox looking for, quote, foolproof suffocation methods. And they did that on the day that Kaylee disappeared. Fuck. Yep, sheriff's investigators overlooked 1,200 entries, including the suffocation search and other damning searches. They were on her computer's Mozilla Firefox browser. And apparently, Casey Anthony was the one that would use that browser. Man, I guess they just didn't have a good computer-savvy investigator on the team. Didn't think to look up the Firefox searches. I do remember Firefox. Anthony was using that old private internet browser that many a Meatsack has used to hide porn in the days of yore. Man, if you didn't think for some reason Casey Anthony was guilty before, how bad does she look now, man? She or someone in the household, but come on, it's her. Looked up foolproof suffocation methods. Yeah, I didn't find out till it's too late. Damn it. Okay, now grab your tissues. Heartfelt update coming in from Bryce Camacho. Bryce writes, hey, Dan, master sucker, king of all suck, Bojangles' favorite spot in the world to hump. Got a bit of a tearjerker, man, but it's about how Timesuck has been there for me. My girlfriend and fellow sucker first played the suck through my ear holes on Suck 161, the Source family. So I guess you could say I'm a noob, but hearing about that crazy bastard, Father Yod, oh man, yeah, sorry, I know, before you get into the heavy stuff, I gotta listen to a little more. I'm only pushing this button because this has become Joe Paisley's favorite band ever. I hear the next Moretta album is going to be heavily influenced by Yahuwah 13. God, I hope so. I don't know if Joe can pull this off, honestly. It's very musically complex. Joe, do you think you could do something like that? Like if you tried really hard. If you took less. All right. Okay, so I guess you could say I'm a noob, but hearing about that crazy bastard, Father Yod, and the way you delivered, I was hooked. Grab your tissues. Here comes the tears. I heard this episode a week after my dad lost his year-long battle with T-cell lymphoma cancer at 48 years old. It's a rare cancer that, to my knowledge, attacks the host white blood cells. He fought it very hard to the bitter end. He worked my entire life, never batted an eye, waking up at 2 a.m., not getting home until 5:36 p.m. Even after getting diagnosed, he would leave work to get radiation treatments for 3 hours, then go back to work. He was the most determined man I've ever met. But when I heard that episode, how you knocked Father Yod into teaching so much, it was the first laugh I'd had in a long, terrible week. The Cult of the Curious was the perfect place for me to get lost. In the amazing community and the holy sacred Suckmaster. I'm a space lizard, as is my girlfriend Aubrey. We love Timesuck. I listen to it constantly in secret at work. Thank you, Apple, for AirPods and a beanie. I've actually listened to every episode up to this date and all of Scared to Death. I'm working listening to all of the Secret Suck. I just got done with your psychic reading, and damn, that bitch is crazy. Yeah. Carol Clark. Sorry for the long message, but I just really wanted to thank you for Timesuck. Hail Nimrod. Hail Lucifina. Fuck pedophiles. And thank you, veterans. Man, so glad the Suck could help you get through a terrible time, Bryce. So glad you could lean on it. Your dad sounded like a Robert Howard. A take no prisoners, get shit done kind of dude. Got to respect that. Hail Nimrod. I hope he lives on in your memories and the memories of, I'm guessing, so many other people whose lives he touched. So happy the Timesuck community has been here for you. I hope they were a source of great comfort over the holidays. And speaking of the holidays, one last update. Let's end on a beautiful message of hope as we enter 2020. This message coming in courtesy of longtime sucker and space lizard and motherfucking Meatsack extraordinaire, Cody Beretta. Sending back in December 10th. Cody writes, subject, warning, a long message about suicide during this season of joy. And then he writes, "Hail team of the Suck. I felt compelled to say something about this topic for some time. Finally decided to weigh in after listening to the conversation regarding suicide on the Stan Lee Timesucker updates. Regardless of their stance on what suicide says about a person, all genuine members of this cult can agree they don't want anyone to take their own lives. The best thing we can do to serve this goal is to kick the stigma of the topic right in its giant stone balls. Talk about it with the purpose of understanding, kindness, and empathy. Many people have the misfortune of having this season serve as a reminder of people they've lost and the despair that can bring. While in the height of your joy from celebrating the holidays with your friends and family, I ask the suckers to take a moment to consider, truly consider, how they would feel if they had lost one or all of their loved ones. Worse yet, imagine how it would feel if the tragic loss occurred during this season of joy and was permanently associated with it. Finally, imagine how you would feel experiencing the grief and utter despair while watching everyone around you joyously celebrate with children, siblings, parents, spouses, friends you lost, during this time. Others still may seem to have everything and everyone they could want or need, but due to chemical imbalances in their brains, they are physically incapable of experiencing joy. This is my malady and is clinically defined as anhedonia, or the inability to feel pleasure. I realize that I have a great life. I'm grateful for what I have and the knowledge that it could be so much worse. However, if you were to graph an average person's mood with ecstasy as the highest point, utter despair as the lowest, and the midpoint being indifference, my mood graph can often chart with indifference being my highest point possible, best case emotion. The fear that this could someday become a permanent state for me is what drives me to be diligent with my talk therapy and medication. I again ask the suckers to truly consider how they might feel if they were to have everything they could ask for, see everyone around them experience joy, and not be able to rouse themselves from a state of not being able to experience joy. I can personally testify that these thoughts have brought a knife to my wrist and a noose around my neck, weary from the fight, hoping that things might improve, but having them not improve. But it can get better. The first step is to get help if you don't have it. Reach out to and be honest with someone you trust. Call the suicide prevention hotline. Join a local support group. Acknowledge and seek treatment for any substance abuse. Schedule an appointment with a psychologist and or psychiatrist. Know that this is a continuing struggle. Some doctors and or medications don't help, but stay strong. Don't be defeated. Try a different doctor. Try a different medication. I've tried more doctors and medications than I can count. Share as much of your struggle with people as you trust you are able to. What can the rest of us do for support? We can talk about this issue. Don't shame depression, PTSD, or suicide. Seek instead to understand and empathize with those who struggle with it. Express an interest to help those struggling. Be kind to strangers. Never bully or take advantage of people more vulnerable than you. Ask how others are feeling with sincerity. Listen genuinely. You never know what a random act of kindness or a stray compliment can do. It might save a life. My name is Cody Beretta, and I suffer from chronic anxiety and depression. I'm not crazy, at least not because of my illness. I have a health condition that I seek treatment for and am compliant with my doctor's prescribed treatment plans. I am no more ashamed to admit I have these diseases than I would be about high blood pressure or diabetes. And my brain is so messed up. When the second you said diabetes, I immediately thought of Wilford Brimley. Diabetes. Because of my diligence with my treatment and support of my family, I have an amazingly supportive wife who is due to deliver our first Space Newt Carrie on January 30th, 2020. There have been countless times I've contemplated giving up when my struggle has been at its worst. I'm proof it can get better. Even when I'm sure beyond a doubt that the psychic torment I experience can never get better, I don't give up. I do everything I can to get the support that is out there from the countless people whose mission it is to help people like you and me. Please don't give up. It's never easy, but I promise you, it's worth it. Cody. Great message. Cody, hail fucking Nimrod. Yes, who knows how many people you just touched. Congratulations on little Carrie, the Space Newt you have coming up in a few weeks. I have no doubt you're going to be a fine father. Love how you compared chronic anxiety to high blood pressure, right? Yes, right? The mind has its own ailments and diseases, just like the body. And you're right. There shouldn't be stigma for those anymore than there should be stigma for obvious physical diseases we can see, or that, are more heavily documented in some way where people don't, think about it in the sense of like, oh, they're just making it up. No, a lot of people truly suffer from a disease just as real as any physical disease that's mental. I hope you did enjoy the holidays. I hope you, are able to experience more joy going forward. I hope you're able to continue to talk publicly about your struggles, continue to normalize and destigmatize what you're currently working through, Keep it up, Meatsack. Lucifina thinks it's super fucking sexy. She approves. Nimrod approves. Bojangles just licked his giant stone balls, so he approves. Now go fuck 2020 up. Yeah.
Thanks, time suckers. I needed that.
We all did.
Have a great week, everybody. Enjoy the final hours of 2019 if you're still listening this year. And then go full Colonel Robert Howard on 2020 and the entire decade. Hail Nimrod, you glorious, beautiful bastards, and keep on fucking sucking.
Timesuck.